Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, friends. I'm Rick Walker. You're watching the Maverick News Channel. We are the Freedom Reporters. I'm here with my co-host and a special guest, and I'll throw it over to Brenden.
It's me, your favorite co-host in all the internet land, Brenden Kennedy. It's great to be here, and special guest Devlin, and we got quite a bit of a story to share with you this evening. It's going to be, definitely one worth hearing, so you'll want to strap in for this one for sure.
Yeah, so Devlin Gannon, you are an independent journalist out in Calgary, Alberta, and you've been covering the freedom protests out there. And before we get into your story, I also want to mention that shortly in the broadcast, at some point in the very near future, we have another guest coming on tonight, Jayden John. And he is also he's a freedom fighter, a protester, demonstrator. He's been with the Freedom Convoy. He went out to Ottawa. He's also from Alberta, though. He's back in Alberta, and he has been going to demonstrations every weekend, I think, since coming back. And he has an interesting story to share with us as well. But Devlin agreed to come on with us tonight because his story is particularly brutal. And that word, I think, is very appropriate given the video that we're going to see tonight, because Devlin was at the protest this past weekend in Calgary doing what he always does, which is working as an independent journalist. And he was arrested, and police used fairly aggressive tactics to achieve what they wanted to achieve with him. Devlin, why don't you introduce yourself and let people know who you are, first of all.
Well, thank you for having me in the first place. Of course, I really appreciate the opportunity. You explained it pretty well. Independent journalist. I've been covering the freedom rallies, not only in Calgary, but kind of all the surrounding little towns and hamlets that have set up their own thing. I get to those as well. And just to give the point of view of everyone there, because we never see anything mainstream down there ever. And, they love to say what we're all about, even though they're never down there, and they love to put labels out. So I like to try and reverse those labels by just showing what is actually happening and who actually goes down. So that's kind of the long story short, and I've been doing it ever since the last 3 years of this craziness kind of all started. So
right. So what is your website, or where can people find your work?
You can go to awakeningthepeople.net. That'll bring you right to the homepage. And there's all sorts of stuff on there. I've been covering it, like I said, for the last almost 3 years. And besides the Calgary rallies, there's all sorts of small towns that have cropped up a lot of freedom rallies that have got pretty big too. So it's a lot of fun.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring up your website so people can see it.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is Devlin's website. This is where he publishes his work. And yes, as you can see right at the top, Calgary Police Brutality Legal Battle is the headline. Yeah. And
so that's very recent as of so not this last weekend. Unfortunately, I've been barred from protests because of all this legal stuff going on. But the weekend prior was March 19th. That's when this occurred. It was actually the Worldwide Rally for Freedom, which happens to be like a bunch of cities coinciding around the world, and they're all rallying on the same day. And that's when that occurred on March 19th, when all of this actually happened as well. So
right. So yeah, I did hear about your story. We were aware of some of what had happened in Calgary, of course.
Right.
And when I heard what happened to you, I thought it was pretty important, because it really concerns me when police anywhere in the world, especially at home, go after journalists, whether they're working, regardless of the media outlet they're working for, or whether they're independent. If you're there working as a journalist, I think that, I think you're there as the eyes and ears of the public, and you deserve to be treated with respect. And
yeah, it seems they target us at this point, honestly. Like, they don't want us to really get the chance to accurately cover what they're doing. And don't get me wrong, it's not like it's a huge target, but they see you with the camera and you're close, that camera's probably getting smacked if they're going aggressive at any point. So
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe at some point I'll share some views with you and the audience about how I think police view the media. I've had many years of experience with police in the past, and I think that they have a perspective problem when it comes to the media. But we'll discuss that. So I do have some links here that you sent. I don't know if you have them there or if you're able to share your screen. Maybe it would be easier if you brought the links up, then that way you can walk us through the story and show us
videos.
The video in the order that you think it will help best illustrate what happened to you this past weekend.
Yeah, I can do that for sure. I'll just click the share button right here. And absolutely, that would probably be the best bet, because there's definitely a lot of things that occurred, and I'd love to go over it. So I'll just go to the website here.
Okay.
Actually, it's right here.
You know, and I expressed concerns early on when we played the news conferences from the Calgary police chief, and his language concerned me just as much as the language coming from the administrative officers, including the police chief in Ottawa, when they were dealing with the Freedom Convoy up there. So
yeah, it's very reminiscent of what I watched occur there for sure.
Well, and it was like an echo, right?
Yeah, I know many people that were there and who are now in Calgary, who went up there and are like, wow, this is crazy to see now in my own city after seeing it up there. So yeah,
I had to watch. I had to watch that press conference with that police chief probably like 10 times, because just the language in it was so volatile. It was I couldn't believe I was hearing it.
Yeah, I know. It was crazy. So is my screen sharing properly here?
It is. We can see it just fine.
Okay, great. So I'll start with this one. This is all video that I've put together through various people sending me and sources of different angles and stuff. So it really does cover our angle pretty well. Just up the quality a little bit. So yeah, as it says, Central Memorial Park on the 19th, and this is where the police chief said we're supposed to be, just so everyone's aware. This was the park.
Is there audio with this?
Oh yeah, is the audio not coming through here?
Not hearing any.
Settings, audio. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to open it up on your end on my website there. It is pretty easy and straightforward. I'm not too sure if the audio is going to come
I'll
through
bring it up
properly
here.
Okay.
If there's audio that I can hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear.
There is audio.
Okay, I've got audio here. So I'll pull the clip up on my end. No problem.
Oh, we're always adjusting with StreamYard.
Oh yeah, I think it might be to do with my Bluetooth headphones here. That might be why.
Right.
Yeah, I can hear it now coming through.
Yeah.
So it starts with me.
Yeah,
it kind of goes over pretty well. Covering who I'm talking to here. It's the Deputy Chief of Police of Calgary, Chad Toffick, who I'm asking why they're kicking us out of the park. And he's telling me, you're breaking the injunction. And then I'm like, well, what part of it? And he lies and says, you can't be in groups of more than 50. And that's not even part of the injunction at all in any way. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about. So, yeah, you can play it.
We're not breaking any laws. We've done nothing wrong.
And just to tee this up, if I know this story correctly, and we're just getting into this, the protest was actually over at this point, and people were dispersing. Isn't that right?
Yeah. The protest had occurred like probably I'd say 12 blocks to the east at City Hall. And City Hall is where everything happened. It all ended, and most people had kind of parked around Central Memorial because that's where it usually occurs. But this whole injunction stopped everyone from being in a park. So even though that's the park that we could have been in, there was no speakers allowed or anything like that. So everyone went to City Hall, and then it ended. And they kind of, not even the majority of everyone, it was about maybe less than half kind of went back to Central Memorial towards their cars and stuff. And the police presence there was just crazy. And they started pushing everybody out of the park no matter what. Like every demographic, age, or profession that day was pushed by a police officer out of the park.
What is it about the park? What are they? Why are they so concerned about the park?
Well, there's this injunction, right, that they put forward saying that we can't we can't make a park unusable to other patrons. That's one part of the injunction. We can't use amplification devices in the park. And there can't be any unnecessary noise, honking, or anything coming from your car. So that day, multiple people were ticketed for just honking their horn while they drove by. Cops would pull them over and just ticket them. And on top of that, they said that you can't march on the roads, which for the past 2 years, the police had been with a police escort shutting down an entire march route with us, doing it with a police officer at the front, and they're shutting down every avenue. And so all of a sudden we can't march on the road. And if we're going to be on the sidewalks, you have to follow all the crosswalk laws, which, I mean, understandable. If you're walking on a sidewalk, they're trying to make all this illegal. What else are they going to do? So they made all these hoops that we had to jump through. And the biggest one being the amplification devices, which if there's a crowd of, at that day was 5,000, how are you going to speak to 5,000 people without an amplification device? You can't. So they moved it to City Hall. That's where amplification devices were, because City Hall is not a park. And that just kind of was the loophole we jumped through to not have to, not have amplification for the day. Yeah. And
the injunction, just before we roll this.
Yeah.
Is it directed at a specific group, or how is it worded? How do they target it?
It's literally anybody. And it doesn't say anything about, like I said, he says to me, you'll hear me in the footage start saying, I'm here by myself. And that's in response to him saying, you can't be in a group of more than 50. And if you read the injunction, that's not in it at all. It's not included as group size or anything like that. And then specifically an hour after this injunction came out, which, by the way, was literally the night before the rally, 7 p.m. when the rally starts the next day on Saturday. So not very long to even inform the public upon it in any way. Anyways, so when that happened, the police chief came out an hour later in a public statement, and he specifically said the rally will still be allowed to happen so long as they follow the rules of amplification devices, and Central Memorial Park, which is this park you can see we're in right now, is where they have to stay. And so, yeah, don't get me wrong, it went to City Hall, but he said Central Memorial Park is the place to be. And that's where half, if not less than half of the crowd had ended up at the end of the rally when it had all ended. And so here's this police force that once you're there, they just make a massive circle that kind of just spread out over and over and over into a line and pushed everybody out of the park. And that's the police chief, the deputy chief right there that I'm talking to, asking why they're telling us to leave. And
all right, let's let this roll. We can get back into it once we watch some of this.
We've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, there's
the man of the hour right there.
Exactly. The man who used to sit behind a desk for the last 20 years and for the last 4 weekends has actually been out on his feet for once.
Okay, what's that?
Yeah, this is the injunction here. It kind of goes over all the pages of it. You can fast forward if you'd like.
Okay.
But it's the full injunction and listing everything about it.
All right. So, in other words, don't disagree with the government or else. That's what the injunction says.
Exactly, yeah. And then the last little bit is the statement that I had said after this page. It'll be the statement from the deputy chief of police saying that there'll be no marching tomorrow, but before that it says permitted to gather in Central Memorial Park, but not be allowed to use anything that could amplify sound, otherwise disturb the area. So that's the chief of police.
His quote is here: there will be no marching tomorrow. Okay.
No
mobile protests. There will be nobody behaving that way down in the belt line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Belt line's a specific community in the downtown of Calgary, which that's not where the protest is even happening anymore, because it's been moved up to now the City Hall area and the court area, which is no longer the belt line.
Okay.
And that was these counter protesters that had showed up. They were quote unquote belt line citizens that were so terrorized by this weekly Saturday protest of such a large demographic of children and pets and families, that was their complaint. And that's why they started showing up and in a group of 20 and kind of starting to be aggressive and assaulting people all the time.
So the counter protesters are citizens. The freedom demonstrators are terrorists.
Yeah, and that's a quote from our mayor. Our mayor had said that we are not protesters. We're all we're racists, we're misogynists, and we don't have a right to protest. It's not a protest, it's a parade. But then this group of 20 who are shutting down the road and violently pushing against police when police are trying to move them, they are allowed to protest, and they're citizens rightfully standing against the group terrorizing them every weekend. Which, again, I'm speaking from her point of view, where, it's like opposite world. It's crazy. It's really, honestly crazy.
It is. The country, the world has gone crazy.
Yeah.
Let's let it roll.
Yes. Sorry. All right. This will be, here we go. It's about to erupt. You'll see.
There will be no marching tomorrow, the chief said.
You gotta love it. Anytime.
Yes, we are. They have the horses up. Look at them shoving them. Look at them.
Yeah, I am.
Stop touching them. Hey. Stop touching them. Hey.
Yeah, I am too. You're
Hey.
And then they come forward right after that and rip my hoodie off now. Yeah.
Yo, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's some language for sure, so be prepared.
Give him his stuff back. What the fuck is wrong with you?
What the hell is that?
I was more concerned about the tyranny.
Right?
What the fuck?
What did I do?
For the
What did I do?
You can hear me. None of them.
What did I do?
Stop pushing me! What the fuck?
Yeah, this is one of my charges that they've arrested me for here. And look at this cop flop bigger than a soccer player.
Yeah, he was trying to trip people. Look at him.
Well,
see what
look,
he's
it's
doing?
not even me. Some other person here in a gray jacket comes in, trips him, and
Actually,
gets
the
his
cop
foot
was
hooked
trying
in.
to trip people. That's what he was doing.
Trip other people,
and then he
yeah.
got tripped up himself. Well,
Yeah,
he was trying to trip people, and then he fell on his butt.
Yeah, and the Crown read out the charge.
He was trying to trip that guy.
Yeah. And it
just-
slows it down.
just
So
sucks
the
it.
Crown read out that I aggressively pushed this officer to the ground, and he fell backwards.
Yeah, he
That's
just
the-
lost
that
his
was the
mouse because
read.
he ate too many donuts.
Yeah.
Well, look
It's,
at him. He needs to exercise a little.
He wants in on the other 4 officers grabbing me, and he just can't get
he
in
wants
quick enough.
But he just couldn't waddle in there because he's just having a little trouble. He's out of shape.
Yeah. And
Too
so
much,
they're all
Netflix
on me
and-
there.
So just to pause that for a sec. So they charged you with assaulting a police officer because that guy fell on his butt, right?
Well,
Isn't
yeah,
that
and the charge read out in my bail hearing was that I aggressively pushed him backwards. So
Yeah.
that's his statement, I'm sure.
And his foot actually never came into contact with you at all, did it?
No, his contact with me was about 4 seconds prior when he was slamming my head down and other officers were grabbing my arms.
Yeah.
And then he tries to run in and still get in on it, and someone else trips him pretty much.
Yeah. You know what, Devlin? I used to think incredibly highly of police. I was very much a police supporter, and now they scare the living crap out of me. I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
me
afraid of
too.
them.
Same boat as you. I have a very, very loving auntie who's
They've
RCMP
lost-
and
They've lost the
Can't-
public's trust largely,
yeah.
and they've lost mine, and that took a lot.
Yeah,
It took a
for
lot,
sure.
but week after week after week of this shit,
Yeah.
and I have no trust anymore in the police. In fact, if someone broke into my house and was threatening me, I'd be
Right.
afraid to call them. To be quite
Yeah.
honest, I'd be
Accurate.
afraid to ask for their help. That's
Yeah,
how
me too.
bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad it is. And this is coming from somebody who, as a journalist for over a quarter of a century, had great relations with police chief after police chief that I ever worked with, police services. I couldn't speak more highly of the guys that I worked with. But today, different story.
Yeah.
He did nothing wrong!
Nice.
So yeah, there's the Calgary Herald and the Sun used the same thing, and the Toronto Star used the same thing, and Quebec. Don't worry, it's non-copyright. I don't know who put this music over this, but yeah, it was someone else's footage, and you can see the whole point of this footage is you see the police officer while I'm being dogpiled on here wind up a haymaker and just lay it right into my back, like as hard as he can. As there's he plays it kind of over and over.
Cowboy Billy Bob.
So was
same
that,
one who tripped.
Yeah, was that really necessary?
No. And I mean, you don't see it here. We don't have good footage of it. We'll have the police body cam footage through my lawyer and stuff, but until then, they do tase me in the midst of all this as well. Like,
yeah, so they
I'm
tase
on the ground.
So when he hit you, did he hurt you?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, and I'll briefly summarize, in high school, I messed my neck up. Got a bone spur on the C7, C6 in my spine. I've got nerve damage in my left hand for life from it. Something I always suffer with. Stopped playing all sports, everything. And, yeah, I mean, every day I've woke up, my neck's been more sore from this. And, I mean, he's punching me in the back for no reason. It's crazy. Yeah, so...
Interesting.
And the taser
so you're
with
laying
5
on
of them.
the ground, and they have how many officers on you there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 officers around you.
And the guy choke holding me on the ground, you can see laying as well.
And then they tase you?
Yeah. So choke holds enabled, knees are in everywhere, guys punching me, and I hear use the taser. And I'm like,
how many guys were punching you?
Just the one, the cowboy hat guy who fell earlier seems to have wanted to run in and get some revenge, even though it wasn't even me. And he punches me in the back. And this is he just replays it over and over. It's only one punch, I think. But this footage, he just plays it over and over, showing it. So, but yeah, they punch me. That could have been the point when I already had taser marks in my back. So who knows? Maybe he's aiming for the spikes in my back, because my lawyer has seen many taser marks, and he says mine have huge, big bruises all around where the injections were, which, I mean, that could have been a good target for a haymaker for sure, So I don't know when the taser even happened, because so much things occurred, but I'm saying I'm not resisting. They're choke holding me, so I can barely even get that out, and I hear use the taser, and bing, bam, tased.
So you told them that you are an independent journalist?
Yeah. And I know these guys. I've talked to the deputy chief before. Like, I knew, that's why I know who he was. That's why I'm like approaching him, asking him, because I know he's going to be in charge, why he's kicking us out of the park. And I mean, he doesn't even know the injunction himself. He's saying things that aren't even part of it. So, yeah.
Any time up until this point where you asked to that or ordered or told that you were under arrest, or...
That's the beauty of it all. Not even one utterance of you're under arrest, you're being detained, nothing. Literally nothing. Like, I'm grabbed, I'm assaulted. Not one of them says you're under arrest or detained. And there's
stop
footage.
What you're doing, or
no, there's footage here which is hard to hear, but there's a point where they sit me on the ground and I'm handcuffed and they're bending me in half. And I'm asking, you can hear it. I'm like, why am I being arrested? And none of them are saying a thing. All of them are just walking around and looking at me and saying nothing. And it's just like, I don't even understand what's going on. It was a turn of events that I didn't really see occurring that day, because I've been at many of them. I've been at them for like the last year and a half.
Folks, nothing to see here.
Yeah, and they start pushing all of these people back, and you can see that they just don't even stop.
See, if I have a problem if I ever have a problem, I don't know what I would do, because I don't know who to call for help anymore.
Yeah,
Because
and I mean,
I don't trust cops anymore. I don't want them to come.
Yeah, I
don't
spoke
want their
with
help.
I spoke with the Western Standard, and one of their journalists told me in confidence, saying essentially that the police told them, hire your own security. We're not here for your safety. It's like, what?
Oh.
That's exactly what you're for. What I don't pay taxes for clowns. I pay taxes for police, you know? So it's crazy to me.
So the Western Standard reporters have been told, or that there's an understanding that police are not there for their safety, that they, so they were basically told, get your own security. We're not here to keep you safe.
Same weekend as this, same weekend as this, pretty much. And
See,
the
cops,
same reporter,
the cops are
was
supposed
kicked.
to be there to keep everyone safe, period.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not supposed to take sides. They're not supposed to be political. They're supposed to remain neutral, unbiased, apolitical, and keep everyone safe, period. That's it.
Yeah.
That's their job.
In a big way, not only in Calgary, like we've seen it across the country, Ottawa specifically, but in Calgary, the cops have become a tool to our mayor, Jyoti Gondek, and our city council. Like, they're a tool. They're a political tool at this point. And you can see right where your paw is on that man's chest there. No badge, but a strange, weird insignia that many of them had that my lawyer himself is quite interested in. But many of the officers, we're not too sure yet. We're kind of trying to figure out.
Where is it?
Right on that officer's right, it'd be his right chest.
Upper right pack.
There.
Right there. It's like a Spartan head insignia, and a couple of them had it. No badges. It's another weird aspect to it. There was no badges on a lot of these guys, and they wouldn't say their names or nothing.
No badge number, no names.
Yeah, nothing. Some of them, don't get me wrong, some of them, but very many of them did not have names, badges, and if you said something asking, because a lot of people did, they wouldn't say anything. So
that's what they did in Ottawa too.
Yeah.
That way, and then they had, masks on and protective gear so you couldn't see their faces, no names. Exactly. We know why, right? We know
they were ready. Like I was told I know a lot of police officers in this town who don't work for the Calgary Police anymore and have been kind of contacting me about all this stuff. And through their contacts in the police, a couple blocks away, there was the fully tacked up people in vans ready for this kind of thing. And many of these officers have a big pack on their hip with what would have been that gas mask that they're going to pull out if that other unit was coming in. And other people I know who live downtown saw the big SWAT vehicles that were about 4 blocks away. And I've been told they were ready for anything to go, the route we saw in Ottawa. So
these guys,
obviously, it's crazy. They're the ones escalating. It's like, it's nuts.
They've got something in their heads that there's like some crazy, political insurrection attempt to overthrow the government. Like that's what they have in their heads. And and it's all coming from the prime minister's office all the way down. So all these freaking jarheads, goons, they're all jacked up in all the cities. They're like, yeah, let's get down there because they're going to overthrow the government, and that's what this is. And you can smell it. It's just idiocy because that's not what's going on. So what the result now is they're targeting
innocent people,
peaceful
people that gathered for 2 years straight in every demographic and wanted to accept every walk of life into the crowd.
Now, as a journalist, all the weeks leading up to that, has there been any violence?
No, not a thing. There's been 4 weeks of counter protesters, which we briefly discussed, being these Beltline citizens that hated us walking through their community. And that violence that you saw anywhere was them against police because the police were trying to move them and they wouldn't listen. And you could see the cops pushing them and hitting them with bikes and stuff while there's peaceful thousands waiting on the street behind them because they're trying to stop all of these people. And the cops sometimes would let it wait an hour until they would move these people, kind of letting tensions bubble, waiting for that fight, waiting for someone from our crowd of thousands to come at them. And nobody would. We were all dancing in the street. There's music systems everywhere in wagons. People are having fun. There's kids and dogs. And finally, the police would do their job and move these people. And they would fight back against the police. And that's the violence I saw. For 2 years, I saw so much love in people that there was no room for violence.
This cowboy hat guy, He seems like a character. He seems like a character. Have you seen him before?
Yeah, he's been at a lot of them for sure. The guy too who initially grabbed like my collar and started this whole thing. Really, he's been at a lot of them and has been an antagonist in the past like 4 weeks during all of this. And you know, like nothing ever occurred until this day after they put that injunction out. It was like they think they have this like golden ticket now to do these things when we didn't even break any parts of the injunction. We all jumped through the hoops they wanted us to, and they were still there like saying you can't be in this park, you can't be in groups of more than 50, and just going crazy.
Look, the Calgary police chief's remarks in his news conferences leading up to this were inflammatory. No question about it. He set the stage for this. He set the tone, and he instilled an attitude, I think, in his officers when they, you know, before they ever went down there.
Yeah. And I mean, like prior to this, with these counter protesters showing up and trying to change the optics on it all, there are literal sitting city council members like on our board right now tweeting and Instagram posts about people going down there and trying to call people down there. And like one of them is actively a BLM member and is just like calling for people to go down there and stand against the white supremacists that gather every Saturday. And they sit on our city council.
Do you have a name for that person?
Yeah, Courtney Walcott. That's the one. And then Carlo Carra. That's the other one. They're two city council members who are very inflammatory about this entire thing and have called Courtney Walcott. Yeah, that's, I believe, not too sure on the spelling for his last name, but it's a dude. It's a man. Yeah.
So you're there not even as a protester.
The point.
You're there as an independent journalist.
From the get-go. I've never even attended one of these without a camera and a microphone and an intent to document. Yeah. And there's the point where you can see they're pushing me on the ground, folding me in half, pulling my arms up above my back, and I start asking like why I'm even being arrested, and none of them even answer ever. And like I told them I have a spinal injury, and it seemed like they had an intent to bend the spine as much as they could after that.
Oh point, so. Yeah. You don't tell them that because then they know right where to go.
Yeah, it was a mistake for sure. That's me just asking. Yeah, why am I being arrested? None of them ever say anything either.
Serve and protect!
People were not impressed.
Yeah, well, I'm not too impressed either, honestly.
There it is.
Mark Newfeld, this is on you! What a crooked police chief. He needs to resign. Meet him in charge!
What are you doing to his neck? What are you doing to him? What the fuck are you doing to him? What is he doing?
Nobody says anything. You can hear me asking
He and his
20 times.
He's not the enemy!
Fuck, you guys are fucking useless. What the fuck? His back is fucked up. You stupid cunts. Fuck.
Like I said, pretty vulgar. People were not impressed. And yeah, as you know, it probably heated in the moment. It can get pretty spicy. But yeah, there's a lot of video evidence. And then like there's another video below that has a beautiful angle I didn't get till afterwards. And that one, I mean, it's pretty much the same stuff, but it shows like this good GoPro footage. Yeah, that one. This footage here off the bat, yeah. Really high up, shows this cop like coming grab it, throwing it back. It's got some of the same footage.
Look at them shoving him. Look at him. Stop touching him. Hey, stop touching him. Stop touching him.
After this one, I think cuts the footage that wasn't in the last one.
Get away, get away.
See, none of them are saying anything. I'm just being assaulted, and they still don't say anything. They're all just like,
So they
start
didn't
circling
say,
in and around.
turn around, you're under arrest. They just started grabbing at you.
Yeah. To like pull me back and beat the shit out of me, which like I'm scared, you know, like I genuinely don't want to. And you can hear right here, I'm starting to say, what did I do? I'm standing in one spot too. I'm not running, saying, what did I do? What did I do? Nobody says anything. They just circling around me and freaking pounce. And it's like there's no verbal anything coming from these guys. It's like I don't understand. It's crazy.
Stop touching him! Hey! Stop touching him! Stop touching him! Hey!
He grabbed you and pushed you away.
Hey! Our children have to live! Hey! Get away! Get away! Our children!
They tried to pull you through the line.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not going back there. That's death. And still nothing being said. And then he turns here, he follows. I'm like, what did I do? And then they come in and just grab me. Nobody's saying anything. This is where the cop decides to flop. There's my assault to police officer charge. Yeah. As he throws himself to the ground from someone else entirely. It's crazy. And like, so like I have a lawyer taking this case and he's eager to take it. He's seen all this footage. Yeah, sorry about the music. Yeah, there's the punch.
Hey, Brenden, maybe you can find the Twitter account for that counselor.
I have, and I've been looking at it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen anything? Might have to scroll back a couple weeks at this point because about 5 weeks ago is when this counter-protesting stuff started. But a lot of Telegram groups I'm in have them screenshotted and have showed and have sent in requests. There's even a statement that's come out from the police chief saying that nothing along the lines of like incitement has occurred from Courtney Walcott because people have submitted a lot of complaints about it as well.
But yeah, I did take a look at the injunction, and Mr. Brad Teets appears to be one of your council members, and he's on the name for the injunction, which I found out of line. Right. Frankly, for a council member, as they should be looking to support their constituents as opposed to restricting them and what they can do. And it's just the very fact that they set these restrictions up with the purpose of doing what they've done to you.
Exactly.
Maybe not you exactly, but it wouldn't matter who. But whatever sacrificial lamb may have come their way. And it just unfortunately so happened to be you, and now we have this predicament. I'm digging on Courtney's Twitter right now.
And Jayden joins us. Jayden, how do you pronounce your last name?
Pasicola.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I got your last name wrong when I was doing up the description in the. But anyway, it's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys too. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah. So you're kind of on here as a dual guest with Devlin Gannon, who is at the Calgary protest, and he's an independent journalist and was arrested by police there in a fairly aggressive manner, as we're seeing in these videos, which is of great concern to me because I never like to see violence of any kind, and especially when it seems to be police who are being aggressive for whatever reason they seem to think that's necessary. I'm not sure, but we can speculate, but it's pretty clear that Devlin was arrested in a very aggressive manner. And you witnessed some of that kind of activity in Ottawa as well, right? Because you went to the Ottawa protest?
Yeah, well, okay, so I actually left on the 16th, so I I left before it got all really crazy. Like when I left, they were just only really handing out tickets for well, I got 3 for parking. Some people got them for handing out gas to people, giving food to people. But yeah, I didn't actually get to see like when the people were ran over with horses and when people were tear gassed in the street. I know there were a couple that I left up in Ottawa that they kind of seen it firsthand. And I know there was this guy, Ange, that I met while I was down there. He was from London, Ontario. And he was actually parked in front of the Supreme Court. And
I just met Ange. Just met him like 2 days ago. Yeah.
And he actually had his window smashed out and he was arrested. And then when he went to pick up his car like 7 days later, it was like all filled with snow and everything in the impound.
Yeah, that's real nice.
See, there you go. You found them. Yep.
Yeah.
There it is.
So there's Courtney Walcott.
Yeah,
Counselor.
that's the counselor in YYC.
Well, I found this one interesting. He's quoting your mayor, but he goes, being down in the Beltline today, seeing the unequal treatment of protesters, the impact of these protesters runs deep. It's damaging everything we want to accomplish as a city. I spent the day hearing from residents, businesses, and colleagues. I'm standing with you. #YYC. And here is your lovely mayor. I spoke with Beltline residents and businesses this morning. I was in the Beltline this afternoon. The weekly disruption this community faces is not a protest. It's a parade at Central Memorial Park. It's a festival with merch and food vendors, yet no permits or licenses. So I'm really tired of these municipal employees that feel like they could dictate the legalities of human rights and protests. Like, this was common all throughout Ottawa, and looking at Calgary, the mayor doesn't get to dictate what's a protest and what isn't.
Exactly. Yeah, and like right under that, you can see that Courtney says one group was met with aggression, the other submission. On that day, he means because the big group of thousands met this group of 20 that stopped the road. So we went around and diverted down a whole different route. So we did submit. And then the group of 20 was met with aggression by the police. The police had to get this group of 20 counter-protesters out of there. And so, like, and he says if the goal was non-violence, it was a failure. So he's like in on it. He's calling people down there pretty much and making it a public thing. There's things in the past too, like going back to 2016, 2017, he was supporting all sorts of different questionable things back in the day. And he's our sitting council member right now.
So when he says,
there he's talking that we're linked to white supremacist organizing. Like that, I've never even seen people like that ever that's an American protest. Like he's quoting a Vice article from the States and trying to link it to things occurring in Calgary, saying we're linked to white supremacists. It's crazy. Yeah.
So the chief says that he doesn't understand even what you're protesting for anymore. So it seems he's having some difficulty understanding. Perhaps you could let the chief know and the public. What is it exactly that the protesters that you're covering there each weekend or have been covering? Yeah. What is it that they want? And then I'll get Jayden maybe to contribute to that as well.
Well, I mean, as far as the concern in Calgary goes and a lot of other places, it's the mandates. And don't get me wrong, we've had the vaccine passport somewhat lifted here in Alberta for the most part and masking and stuff. But, like, I can't travel. Nobody else can travel if you don't have a vaccine passport. That's a big thing, especially even interprovincially. It's like you can't even fly across your own country at this point without a vaccine or get on a train. So that's a big one. But like, don't get me wrong, there's a huge part of this that is going to be the optics of the people who did this, the politicians, both elected and career politicians, And like our mayor and our police chief, people like these are going to just try and rescind into the shadows once these mandates are lifted and the optics are changed, and act as if they didn't do that to us for the last 3 years. And then you do it again at any point in time whenever it becomes, the norm for them. And like, that's just, I know for me, and I'm not speaking just for myself, because I know a lot of people share that sentiment of the people who did this need to be held accountable. And until that is a reality, there's going to be no way that the spotlight fizzles out, because the spotlight's been put on them. And that's a big aspect of what these are going to evolve into, I think.
So Jayden, you're still going, you've come back from Ottawa and you're still going to demonstrations on weekends. Your experience in Ottawa, you tell me that it's been really very positive. And when you were there, you had everybody there sign your car and stuff. Maybe you could take us out and show us around your car a little bit or something, so that we can kind of see what you have going on there.
Yeah, I can do that. Here, I'll flip this camera around here.
Sure, because his story is his experience has been a little bit different. He hasn't been arrested.
Actually, StreamYard doesn't have a. There you go. That'll work.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I got signatures all over it. Lots of these are actually from like, some of them as far as like a year ago from now, because I've been rallying for quite some time. But yeah, there's a good amount from while I was up there. Well,
that's gorgeous.
These are my tickets that I got there. The first one I wrote Truck Trudeau on, and so it was actually like the day I was leaving, and they had asked me how long I was planning on staying there, and I said I was leaving that day, and they said, well, you better get leaving soon, because we're going to start ticketing and then towing the vehicles out of there. And I said, well, I'll be back in an hour. And they told me my car probably wouldn't be there, but there are still lots of cars parked around mine. So when I got back, they actually gave me 2 more tickets that day, which the one was even for obstructing traffic on a highway, which I was parked along the side of the road. I wasn't even on a highway. But yeah, I just showed the way they were. But yeah, no, like the majority of the police down there when I was there, they were all friendly and stuff. There were the few that were more serious and didn't really maybe like us being down there. But for the most part, it was a positive experience. The one thing I do want to talk about is they made it out like we were like a bunch of terrorists and we were vandalizing stuff, and there wasn't any vandalism done on our side, but we had all our stuff vandalized. My car actually, it got egged the one day, and I know people who had theirs egged and keyed and stuff. Some people, the streets had their flags ripped off their antennas and everything. And then this was like probably like 5 days before I left. The one night, someone actually slashed all our right back tires down the one street. They started at the front of it where there was actually a cop like sitting there. I don't know how the cop missed it, but they got all the way down to the end of the street before they actually got caught, which they did get arrested and they were charged. I was in contact with some officer, because we were all put on a file case, like all of us who had our tires popped and stuff. Yeah. And he said he would update us on that, and if the person pleaded guilty, there'd be reimbursements on like our tires and stuff, and if they didn't, then we'll go through the court for quite a while. But I didn't actually hear back from that officer, but it doesn't surprise me because they broke crap down there as well. They vandalized vehicles and broke windows and stuff. But yeah, it just really shows how the media twisted stuff down there when it was actually our stuff getting vandalized.
Yeah, and the media really didn't report it that way at all, did they?
No,
we ran.
Like we were a bunch of terrorists when we were all carrying our nation's flag down the street. It's like, yeah.
The Canadian flag makes you a terrorist today.
I guess so.
Well, I did see a what the hell is it? There was a forum, and it was talking about how this person was going on about how whenever they see a Canadian flag on a car now, they assume it associated with the alt-right.
Yeah.
What, please define the alt-right in Canada for me, please. I'd like to know. What the heck does that even mean? They use that term like it's a boogeyman, right? It's like the alt-right. Well, what is it? Define it for me. And I guess I'm asking the wrong group of people because we're not the ones. Like, I want a definition. Give me a definition.
It's like ever changing.
It's
like
anybody that
impossible.
disagrees with them, I guess.
Exactly, right?
Alt-right. Sounds pretty scary, but I'd like a definition.
Let me know when you get one, because
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be looking for a long time.
Well, I guess it's in the Oxford Dictionary.
Oh, is it?
Says, in the U.S., a right-wing ideological movement characterized by a rejection of mainstream politics and by the use of online media to disseminate provocative content, often expressing opposition to radical religious or gender equality. And it provides a little sentence example. It says, some are seeing this as a victory against the vitriolic online presence of the alt-right.
Yeah, like
Whatever.
at that point, they could. It's a blanket term for just anyone that posts something that the government doesn't like. Essentially, that's what they're going for, or posts or does something that is provocative in the eyes of our overlords.
So, Jayden, back to your story. What made you go to Ottawa for the Freedom Convoy? How did you get connected with that?
Well, okay, so I went back to Ottawa actually on the 18th of September for the Worldwide Rally. But I was actually just in the diner the one day where I work, and my one buddy from the rally was there, and he asked if I wanted to go, and well, I just figured it was something I wanted to get into, or onto, go to Ottawa. Thought it'd be a good experience, and yeah, it turned out pretty good.
And how would you characterize the freedom protest? How would you describe it to people? Was it a bunch of white supremacists, terrorists, and were you all down there causing problems and trying to overthrow the government?
No, just a bunch of peaceful Canadians who all came there from across Canada, and all came there for the reason that we wanted the mandates dropped. Preferably Trudeau to resign, which clearly didn't happen. He ran to who knows where before we even got to Parliament building. Like the coward he was, or is. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where I inject my opinion a little bit. The police chief in Calgary has described the protests that are happening in his city on weekends, the freedom protesters, as now he's characterizing you as anti-democracy protesters. And those are his words.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister also has suggested that what happened in Ottawa and these freedom convoys and so on, that they are also an assault on democracy. What these guys don't seem to get, is that protests like this, protests in general, are part of democracy. The honking of the horns, that's the sound of democracy. Justin Trudeau doesn't seem to understand that, just because he got elected, it doesn't mean he gets to do whatever he wants. And just because he got elected, it doesn't mean that people are not allowed to oppose him. In fact, in any healthy democracy, there's constant opposition to any government that is in power, regardless of which party they are, because that's part of the process. The process doesn't just involve Parliament and doesn't just involve members of Parliament debating in the House of Commons. A big part of the process, perhaps the largest part of the process, involves the people. Even after the election, the people can remain involved and should, to make their voices heard, because it doesn't end. You don't just get to vote once every 2 to 4 years, depending on whether it's a minority, majority, whenever the elections are called. And then the citizens have to go away and just accept whatever the government tells them. It's a process. People get to voice their opinions. That's why they have public opinion polls. The politicians want to know what the mood of the public is. So these convoys are part of the process. Squelching them, crushing them, throwing people who oppose your points of view in jail, having police go down there and assault you, arrest you, getting injunctions to prevent you from protesting, that's the assault on democracy. They don't seem to understand that anymore. This is a really serious problem. And going after an independent journalist like Devlin is a huge assault on democracy, because you're trying to silence the voice of a journalist who is down there trying to act as the independent eyes and ears of the public, which is his job. That is what he is doing. That's what he's supposed to do.
And the conditions they've given me now, it entirely bars what I've been doing for 2 years. Like, one of them is a blanket, I cannot attend a protest. So there's a charter right that's just gone. And then on top of that, the whole downtown core of my city, where my mother lives, my sister lives, where other work that I do is, I'm barred from at all times, forever, until my trial date occurs. I cannot enter the downtown core of Calgary. That's where the courthouse is located. That's where City Hall is located. If I was to take transit to the north or the east of the city, it goes through downtown. Like, they are infringing upon so many things now that I can't even go to these protests. And it's not like it's Calgary protests. It's like any protest. If I manage to get out of Canada and go to South America and attend a protest and put that on Facebook, I'm breaching conditions. Like, it's crazy to me.
We're going to run a little promo here to hopefully build some support for what we're doing. It'll run for just a moment, and then we'll be back to continue this discussion.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
And you can donate at freedomreporters.com if you would like to support our work here and what we're doing to help keep our voice on the air. You can click the hot link in the YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble descriptions, and we encourage everybody to subscribe and watch us over on Rumble, away from the censorship platforms of Facebook and YouTube, because like every other free voice out there, we're always afraid that we are going to be censored, and we're always being very careful about what we're saying over here, as candid as we are. And with that being said, I'll throw it to Brenden to tell you how else you can support us.
Please give this video a thumbs up, and make sure you hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to share it with everybody. So share it with your mom, share it with your dad, your brothers, your sisters. Maybe not them if you guys aren't getting along so good and that sort of thing. But you get the point. Share it with everybody. And back to the show. So, Devlin, I have to ask, these conditions that you were given,
Yeah.
was that established by like a bail judge, or was that established by the Calgary police?
So it was a bail judge. Like, they held me for 24 hours. I went to the Riemann Center, did the whole bail hearing process, and yeah, so among the whole, don't enter the downtown core at any time, don't attend a protest, I can't have or carry weapons, which, like, I don't own any already, so it's not really a big issue for me. And then the last one is I have to always tell them where I live, and if I want to move, I need to update them. Or it actually says update my parole officer, which they didn't assign me a parole officer. So, yeah, not too sure exactly what I'm supposed to do with that going forward, considering like my lawyer even said the Criminal Code of Canada says that any kind of conditions that you're given are supposed to be as little infringing as possible. They're not supposed to infringe upon your ability to make income. They're not supposed to infringe upon your ability to see family, all of which this is doing in every way. And then, like, don't even get me started on the charter right that I apparently don't have anymore with not being allowed to attend a protest, which I've never been a protester. I've been there as a journalist from the get-go and have always been there as a journalist. So anyways, yeah, it's an interesting set of events as far as being told that, and then knowing the future of the next couple months ahead of me is going to mean that's something that I have to deal with now for an unknown amount of time if they don't, rescind something. And my lawyers already tried to push things forward to the Crown before my hearing to get these things changed, but nothing as of yet. So, yeah.
So how are these protests down in your neck of the woods there, Jayden? You're in Red Deer, isn't that right?
Yeah, Red Deer. They're going pretty good. We haven't had any problems with cops for a while, because we did actually back in spring before, like, we kind of quit them for the summer and then started them back up in the fall. But they have grown to a decent size. They're at about 80 right now. Clearly not as big as Calgary's, but they do have a big population over there. So before the convoy, there's probably actually only like 30 to 40 on like the good days. But when I was down in Ottawa, I actually seen some pictures from back at our rallies, and there's probably like about like 100 to 50 to like 250 like for like the 3 weekends that I was down there. And then when I got back, it was also a really big rally. But I noticed after like the majority of the restrictions were dropped and the Freedom Convoy stuff kind of ended, lots kind of did stop showing up, but there's still lots showing up there. And yeah, no problems from the cops. We got like the odd peace officer that like drives up and stops there, watches it for a minute. Odd police officer. We do actually get some that honk their horns when they go by, supporting us too. We've had like ambulance drivers support us, honking their horns. We've even had like city buses and even a fire truck too one time. So like I think the majority of them do support us. But I know like even before in spring, like we always had this one cop that followed us around with his camera, and he'd come up to everyone, take pictures of them and everything. And it was more just intimidation. There were some people that did get some tickets back like way back then, but it's been all good here the last little bit.
Mm-hmm. When that whole George Floyd thing was going on, did you guys have BLM marches at the height of the pandemic in your communities?
Yeah, in Calgary there was big ones, like thousands of people, and it was about 4 weekends in a row. And they were really big. Nothing went crazy.
Yeah. And that was when there weren't supposed to be any outdoor gatherings, but they just said,
they were in support of the media.
Go ahead. But at that time, were there any freedom protests happening at the same time?
Yeah, there was really small ones in Calgary. Like it started pretty small, like 12 people on some days, and up to 40 when it got big. And then one of those worldwide rallies happened, and that was just a huge turning point where from that point forward, it was like no less than 1,000. And then they just grew and grew.
Just to go back, when the outdoor gathering restrictions were still in place, were there any tickets handed out to people who came out to those freedom rallies?
Yeah, they were like when they were in the 12 to 40 range of people. There was arrests made, there was tickets done, there was a huge there was a point where there was cops like arresting people for skating on skating rinks here in Calgary, and there was a big public arrest where they cut the skates off a dude and they violently grabbed him off the ice and arrested him because he wouldn't come off the ice. And that the next weekend, all these people brought hockey sticks out to the rally and kind of were playing, smacking the puck back and forth along the march. And everybody with the hockey stick that day got arrested for carrying a weapon as this hockey stick, and they arrested a bunch of people. They arrested someone who was in a Santa Claus suit. It was they definitely were trying to scare people away when it was starting out, for sure.
Wow. So are these protests, Jayden, these demonstrations, do you think they're having an impact?
Well, I don't think they have like the biggest impact, but one thing it does do that's good is it's built community around Red Deer. I think we have changed some people's minds, so that's a good thing. And I don't know, it has really brought people together. I know, like, I think it could be good for in the future, depending on the way things go. But yeah, I don't know. We're just all trying to do our part out here. We don't have speakers and really marches right now like in Calgary, but we more just kind of stand on the corners with our signs, and depending on, like, some people right now have signs on like the current bills like S233 and like the digital IDs that are kind of starting to be rolled out and stuff,
right.
And just trying to educate the passerbyers, which we have noticed a big turnaround. We used to get lots of people flipping us off all the time, and it has, over the course of like the last like even 4 months, it's changed drastically. A lot more supporters now.
Yeah. So what happens with you now, Devlin? You go back to court when?
Well, it won't be a back to court thing because they've changed everything since COVID. It's April 11th will be I plead not guilty, and that's just going to be like a 2-minute Zoom call with my lawyer, pretty much. So from there, I'll know an actual trial date. But I'll briefly summarize my lawyers from Edmonton, Tom Engel, and his whole history in all of his cases. Well, maybe not all, but a lot is police brutality, police corruption, police negligence. And he's familiar with the city police in Calgary already. Like, he's last year in 2021, he put a Calgary police officer in prison, and he'll be serving time still now. And that's like he knows that these cops here have stepped out of line. He's already
go back. What was that? Somebody's.
Yeah, he there was a case that occurred in 2013 that my lawyer heard of, and this case didn't have any kind of settlement. He just heard of this, don't know how, and he kind of opened it up and got a Freedom of Information Act for a helicopter from the Hawks footage of this case. Essentially, it was a man who was violently beat by a police officer in a park late at night in -30, and this guy never pressed charges. He was probably scared of the cops and everything, and long story short, my lawyer took the case open, and now that cop is in jail serving time. This happened in Calgary, and maybe a little more than 6 months ago now, he submitted a negligence claim against the chief of police in Calgary, Neufeld. And that was in relation to another case, and Neufeld had to publicly come out and say that they were negligent and did not perform properly on the case. So he's aware that these police have stepped out of line. And long story short, he's confident that this might not even make it to trial, that this is probably going to get tossed out because they don't want this to even go to trial with all the video and stuff that I have. And but besides that, like, obviously I'm in full defense mode right now. It is get these legal criminal charges off of my record. This can't be a thing. But after that, it's we swap the gears into offense mode, and I will be pushing charges against the Calgary police for sure. Because, like, to summarize, my neck is messed up, and it's already been messed up for life, and it hurts a lot from what they did to me. And they tasered me. There was clear missteps in this entire thing, and beyond police that were in the arrest, it's also the, like you had brought up earlier, the people who signed this injunction into being. Like, they, on top of our police chief and our mayor, the city council members and the people who sit on the police commission have for a long time been slandering what's going on here and set up the optics of what occurred and only facilitated the violence that actually happened. So accountability is number one in the end for this. That's what I want, is accountability.
Yep. Jayden, people who are not vaccinated still can't get on an airplane in this country. They still can't get on a train. When you're down there on the weekends, is that one of the main things that you're fighting for, is people who are still seeing their rights violated?
Yeah, for like the federal mandates, and even like lots of people here, they think it's all over, but when you walk into most of the stores, the employees all still are wearing masks. There's some companies, even like there was a company recently that just mandated the vaccines for their employees, but yeah, no, you walk into like Walmart, you go into Home Depot, and everyone's still wearing their masks. So obviously their employers are obviously mandating it for them. And so we're standing out there for that reason too.
Yeah. How did you guys find, or how would you describe Alberta throughout this pandemic compared to the rest of Canada and even the United States? It seemed to me like Alberta had some of the more harsh measures in place. And it seems like your premier has been a pretty hardline guy when it comes to all of this stuff, especially with churches.
Yeah, the churches, I mean, all you have to say is Pastor Artur Pawlowski at this point. And if you don't know his name, he's still in custody now, has been for over 40 days, might be even 50 at this point. And the churches all got shut down. And in all honesty, the premier, in my eyes, flip-flopped during all of this more than a fish out of water. You could watch a fish out of water flop around, and you'd see more sides of Kenny. And he's gone from saying open for the summer, open for good, vaccine mandates, I've never heard of that, and that goes against our Security Act, so we'll never have something like that. Fast forward 4 months, boom, the restrictions exemption program, which is a vaccine passport. And he flocked around like crazy. And like every province, I'm pretty sure, he shut down everything right off the get-go. Boom. Hardline shutdown, longer than 2 weeks. And he's been doing damage control now for the last 6 months in a big way. And I mean, when Ottawa was occurring, he was on our side saying it's unnecessary for Trudeau to enact the Emergencies Act. And you can see what we did with the Coutts border. We just used our police peacefully. And then behind the scenes, he's sending a bunch of police from our province over to Ottawa to assist in Ottawa. So like in the public eye, he's saying Trudeau's in the wrong. And then behind the scenes, he's like, here you go, buddy. And yeah, there's so many examples of that, man, just saying one thing and doing another. And yeah, it's sad.
When you're out on the street, and what do you think the public opinion is of the premier, Jayden?
Well, I know he's kind of changed his like tone a bit here recently, but I think the reason for that is because there's that SGM coming up on April 9th, exactly, where he can be voted out, maybe. So I think he's kind of changed his tune to try and make people forget what he's done over the last 2 years, hoping that they will for some reason keep him. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I mean, they did change it to mail-in voting now, though, so who knows what's really gonna happen, if there's gonna be something they kind of pull there, maybe.
Yeah. You know, when I started to watch this unfold, and the convoy was making its way across Canada, it seemed like a national moment, a moment of national pride, an outpouring of Canadian pride, flags everywhere, people singing the national anthem, standing on overpasses while the trucks went by. It seemed to give people hope that things might, get back to normal in some way. And your car, I think, represents that. How did all the signatures and everything come to be on your car? How did that happen?
Well, okay, so it was actually about like a year ago that I first did up my car. It was actually my first freedom event I went to. And there was a convoy that came from Calgary and Edmonton and met up in Red Deer. And then right after that convoy, so there was like about 250 vehicles in it that day. Right after that convoy, I took all the writing off my car because I actually used what is blue on it right now was tape, and I ripped all that tape off. And then it was like a month later, there was another convoy, so I went to put all the tape back on. But that convoy, it wasn't actually that big of a turnout. There's probably only like 6 of us. But after that, I kept all the tape on my car. And over time, I just kind of thought like, well, how could we kind of show others that people support freedom? Because at that time, there was only like, there wasn't very many of us, probably like 12 on a corner most days. And so I wrote "Sign for Freedom" on the car, and I started getting people to sign it. So most of the signatures are from Red Deer and just Alberta, but that's how it came to be. And I ended up getting tired of like replacing the tape all the time because it would fall off. So I just actually took a paint marker and I colored around the tape, filled it all in after.
Nice.
So how many signatures do you have on your car? Have you counted them?
Oh, I don't even know. I know I had like some paper a long time ago with kind of what town people were from, and I lost count at over 100. There's definitely like there's been probably over 250 on it, maybe more. I don't know.
Do you remember who the first person to sign it was?
There was a few. It was mostly just like our group from the rally that when there was 12
the small group, right? Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you drive that thing up to Ottawa, or did you go with someone?
I drove it up. It actually made it there twice. So
right, yeah, because you got your tires slashed, right?
With the convoy, all the way from in Wawa, Ontario to the Parliament, the check engine light was actually flashing, which that's like about 12 hours driving. But when we got to the Parliament, we figured out all it was like a spark plug wire. So we fixed that, and it ran perfect. Wasn't sure if it was going to make it there, though, when all the problems started happening, but just happened to make it there. And then the way back, it was no problems at all. It was perfect.
And what a bunch of anxiety to go through with your
engine.
Your check engine light's going, and you don't know if that's going to be like $100 or thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
When it was like right in Wawa is in that area of Ontario where there's not really any like cell reception, so it just happened to be good too that we were like in the middle of the convoy because it was nighttime at that time, so it was pretty cold in those areas. If anything like that happened.
Well, and I'm from Northern Ontario myself, and I'm familiar that there is not really any service stations along that route at night that you're going to be able to go to fix anything. So, Devlin, you have court on April 11th coming up.
Yeah.
And
Zoom call court.
Zoom call
and I'll
court.
plead not guilty, that's for sure.
What's your lawyer projecting for a turnaround time altogether?
Well, he said it could be, if it really gets drawn out, upwards of like a year at most likely. But like from the April 11th not guilty plead, we're going to be pushing for it as soon as possible court date. Because like we're ready to go. We're ready to defend this thing. We're eager to do it because not only am I going to get rid of these charges, but we got other things that are going to have to get in the works after that to, push a lawsuit against the Calgary police. But once this date of not guilty happens, I hope to within the next month have a hearing in front of the court. So we'll see.
I don't understand.
Me either.
Why
because
we're
it
in
makes
this
no sense.
place as a country? Why do you think this is happening? Why do you guys think this is happening? Why are the cops acting like this? What are they so afraid of? I don't see the threat that they seem to see.
For me, at least, to say it simply, it's the fact that their morals lie where their paycheck lies and not where they should lie. And like a lot of these guys are yes men, and they don't hire people with integrity like they used to for this police for the police force anymore. They just hire people who will follow orders, and those are the kinds of people that will follow whatever orders you give them so long as the paycheck comes through. And that's what we're seeing here. A lot of the people who did have integrity are either on unpaid leave because of this whole like forced mandatory vaccination thing, or have gone on unpaid leave because of what they're seeing happen with the police force. And it doesn't even have to do with anything to do with these mandates. And I mean, one of those people, Brian Dennison, who, if you don't know who he is, he worked for the Calgary Police, was an officer for them within the last year, and 6 months ago or so, he publicly quit because of not only the vaccine mandates, but he was not confident with what was going on here in Calgary. And I mean, there's a public poll recently of a 19% faith in the leadership. And this was a poll done to the Calgary Police, and they had 19% faith in the leadership, 19% morale. So that's like, how are you going to do a job that you don't like well? Nobody who hates their job does their job well, and that's what we're seeing here.
You know, Jayden, you said, and we'd heard this before, that there was some hope that when the convoy was making its way to Ottawa, that by the time you got there, Trudeau might resign, right? Okay, but that's a political hope. That's not you heading to Ottawa to physically remove him through force or coercion or an armed insurrection. Or am I wrong? Like when you're out there talking to people on the weekends, right? Because they're working through the week, and then you guys go out on the weekends and do your demonstrations, right? So I guess you're only part-time insurrectionists. Does anybody out there talk about heading off to Ottawa with a bunch of guns to overthrow the government? Is there any talk like that at all? Because, man, I don't hear it.
No, I know there's been people pissed off at the government when they like come in and ride over people with horses, but no one's talking about like driving across the country to like blow it up or go in and do what we saw like in the United States with when they kind of went in there on that insurrection, which there's lots of messed up stuff behind that too. That
I mean, that wasn't even that was.
The police are like, come on in.
Media spin around
You're
that. It's kind of like, yeah, exactly. It's like, come on in, and come on in, and here it's a big trap, but here you go.
Enjoy the next year in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do us all a favor.
There's never talk
walk
like
through
that
door. So,
well,
again, what
know
it about this?
This is a culture war seeping into local politics, and then once it's seeped into local politics, then we get these woke administrators from the municipal level, and this was very apparent with Devlin's situation. It was very apparent with Diane Deans, the member of the Ottawa Police Board, who was later ousted and is quoted as saying, "I couldn't stand seeing those bouncy castles. I just wanted to pop them." This is.
I wanted to go down there and just poke those bouncy castles myself and deflate them. That's what she said in that Zoom meeting. She was enraged. That woman needed
fuming.
Yeah, she needed a tranquilizer.
But look, make no mistake, this is a culture war seeping into the municipal politics, and this is why we have this. And it's like not only with this injunction that we've seen in Calgary, but as well with the one we've seen in Ottawa. It was all designed to stir the pot and inflame the situation.
Well, and I mean, with the injunction even now, like besides my legal case, besides the charge of assault of a police officer that they're going after me for, they are charging me with obstruction of this injunction. So, like, there's a part of this that is revolved around this injunction in every way, because they're saying that I obstructed it, and my lawyer is not only going to have to defend the BS easy disputable charge of assault of a police officer based on the footage we have, but he's going to have to tear apart the injunction, which he already has slightly with me. Obviously, I'm not going to sit with a 4-hour meeting with him because he's going to bill me for every 15 minutes. But he, within the short time I have sat down with him, he's already torn apart multiple things about this injunction that don't make sense, that they have no standing on, and there's just aspects of it that, well, even if we're gonna say it's all right and legal, nobody was breaking parts of it that day, and it's just they are using it as this golden ticket, and this golden ticket is actually just wrapped in tinfoil, and the tinfoil is colored in gold. And it's not even real. Yeah. They're like, they're 2 seconds before that is, that cop claiming I aggressively pushed him. It's crazy. And so, I am, as you can see there at the bottom, I'm crowdsourcing my legal fund because I have to defend these charges, and I'm not, I'm not going to reach out to Rebel News, who's already tried to get me in their pocket, because I'm not feeling like lying in the pockets of anybody there either. I'm doing this myself, and the lawyer's very eager to take it, but he is a lawyer, so he doesn't come at a free price.
So what's your concern with Rebel News?
Well, nothing at all. They're great. It's just a lot of their public crowdsourced legal fund stuff for other people. It's not publicly disclosed in any way, so who knows where it's going. They're great, and they cover awesome stuff. They do amazing work. I just they were wanting to jump on this right away and provide me with a lawyer and do crowdsourcing stuff, and I was like, I just want this to be as transparent as possible for me and for anyone who knows about this. And so like anything here donated to that goes to my lawyer's trust fund account straight into it, and that's where we're going with it. And I mean, hoping to get the charges dropped so I don't even have a long legal case. That's the ideal goal.
And have you had much support in that regard so far?
Yeah, definitely. As I said earlier, I can't go to rallies, so I can't go really speak for myself in front of the crowd of people who would be familiar with this situation. But there's been a lot of people that, like, God bless them, have reached out and done things for me among all of this. They were trying to set up GoFundMes, trying to set up Give Send Goes, and I was telling them, like, especially not GoFundMe with everything that's occurred with them. But a lot of people have reached out, and we are seeing donations into it from anywhere of $5 to $100, and it's definitely extremely flattering. And I cannot say enough how much I appreciate anyone who has donated. It's something I despise the idea of, putting my name behind a crowdsourcing fund like this. It's something I never could have imagined having to do in my life, and I've never been the kind of person to be like, help me, I need money. And that's not what this is, but this is definitely a case that a lot of people have already said they want to see accountability held out through this, and this is the chance that we can really go for that. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is hold not only these police accountable, but as we've discussed, a lot of these politicians and council members are very out of line and made this a reality in every way. Yeah.
This just, this, in my estimation, has already cost Calgary police dearly, because they have, they've just done so much damage to their relationship with the community by doing this.
I mean, we had 2 years, like I said, of them giving us a police escort, shutting their roads down. We told them our march route. We gave them all the information to possibly keep this as peaceful and organized with them as possible. And I can tell you with confidence that them stepping back and wanting to stop this and then starting to do what they're doing here is costing them a lot more resources and money than anything that would have occurred with a peacefully organized march that was always happening with them. And their whole thing, like our mayor has quoted saying that too much resources have gone to policing these rallies over 2 years. And it's like, you're spending more resources doing what you're doing here in every way, for sure.
Man.
Yeah, It's something that I think a lot of people, really, as terrible as it is to say that I went through this, a lot of people are now seeing that, like, it's not just in Ottawa. It can happen anywhere. Like, these police are not here to serve and protect. They're not here to help us anymore. They're out for our politicians, and they're being used as a political tool in every way.
What do you think the objective here is with the politicians? Because, I mean, this all started as under the guise of public health.
Right.
Does this look like it's to keep people healthy?
No.
So
And I mean,
what in your estimation as a journalist, and maybe you can give me your opinion too, Jayden, because you're out there fighting for freedom, whatever that means. Because, you know, I think everybody has maybe a slightly different definition or perspective on what freedom is. But what is the objective? What's the goal here of government at this point?
well, I mean, to speak personally, my personal point of view on what their goal here would be is not only to change the optics of what's been going on from being a peaceful thing, because they've done everything they can with the media to already try and say it's the opposite. Now they're doing it in a very visible way, and they're escalating things on their end to a physical point. But the politicians, they want this to end because it is done more than stand against these mandates. It's awakened people to the fact that they lie, the fact that they are so blatantly, willfully ignorant. And I say willfully ignorant because it's not ignorance. They have the ability to have all the information that everybody has, and they choose to ignore it. And so the fact that people are awakened to the fact that our politicians can so easily misstep and then lie about everything occurring, and when the truth is out there in the open, still lie about it and not admit to it. That's what's happened here. And it's gone beyond this standing against mandates thing, which is still relevant because they're still pushing them. And they hate that. They hate that idea. They hate the idea of people waking up to the media lying to them. They hate the idea of people waking up to the government being wrong and actually wanting to formulate their own opinion instead of being told their opinion. And that's just, they don't like that idea, so they want to change that. And that's why they're starting to get so aggressive with a movement that's peaceful, because it's provided an avenue for people to wake up to their lies.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Jayden?
Well, I think they were hoping with, like, especially right now in Alberta, dropping the restrictions, that this would all just end. But friggin' people have woken up to the fact that this was more than about COVID, and people are starting to, like, research into the 2030 agenda of the UN, and people are looking into more of that different stuff. So I think the cops some of them are kind of trying to, like, maybe do this to try and hope to keep us silent. I don't know. It's not gonna work, obviously, but I don't know.
It's intimidation. That's what it is from the police.
And I want to get you
That's
guys to give me your, wait, what does freedom mean to you? What is freedom? It's a catch-all phrase, but what does it mean to you guys?
Well, I mean, if I feel that I should be able to wear a mask, I should be able to go do that. If I want to get vaccinated, I should be able to go do that. But I shouldn't be forced to be vaccinated and made where I can't go eat in certain restaurants and go do certain activities and different things just because of my medical status.
So for you, it's about choice and freedom of choice, freedom of medical choice, autonomy of body.
Yeah.
Largely in this context, as it relates to these protests and demonstrations. For you, what about you, Devlin?
Well, for me, honestly, like, we have, at this point, you can point back to hundreds of years of established things pointing towards what freedom means. We have a charter, we have a Bill of Rights. These are things that were written down to try and establish what freedom means. And there's so many things over these last 3 years that have attacked so many various aspects of that charter, like our mobility rights, to our right to travel, our right to peacefully gather, our right to protest, our medical privacy rights. And there's so many things that have just been infringed upon. So like the right to choice is extremely important. And beyond that, it's the fact that like it's been a total bombardment on our freedoms. And for me, freedom is a very large picture filled with every color in the rainbow. It's not a black and white tiny little portrait. It's something that covers so much ground, and they've done so much in these last 3 years to cover all that ground and try and take away aspects of every part of our charter and our Bill of Rights. And it's scary, because I'm born and raised here, don't get me wrong, but this country has been a beacon for freedom for the world, and people come here because of that. They know that this country has established things that I just talked about, and that they've been around for so long that this is the place they want to be. And I have talked to so many people that are immigrants to this country that are just astonished at what is occurring here and have seen it happen elsewhere and can't believe that it's happening. And it's scary.
So this is the police chief of Calgary, and this is him back on the 14th.
My birthday.
I want to run this. I'm not sure if this is the clip I was looking for. He might say something different, but so I won't do too much to tee it up. Let's just listen to what he had to say back then, because I just remember he was kind of setting the stage for all of this.
Oh,
and
for sure.
I said, look for an escalation in violence in the weeks ahead, starting that coming weekend, because of what he said. And of course, what do we have on our hands right now? What are you facing? Exactly what I thought was going to happen, and I think a lot of people saw coming.
To have two groups that, number one, would not cooperate ahead of time. There seemed to be an appetite on both sides to have a conflict. And like I say, I would say that both sides were able to contribute to that. And when I say both sides, I'm not talking about, the homogenous group, because I would suggest to you that both groups are anything but homogenous. We've heard stories that the residents are out there, and these are all residents of the Beltline. That is not the information that I have. I certainly would agree that there's residents of the Beltline and maybe business owners participating due to their frustration, and that would be understandable. But there are also professional protesters out there as well. There are people out there who...
Is that true, Devlin?
Well, so he's specifically seeming to be talking about these counter-protesters right now. Residents of the Beltline that are out there in defiance of the march going through. And so for once I can say he's actually speaking a bit of truth, because there are paid protesters down there. There's a woman who was running it and has been there every time with her loudspeaker that is like a public BLM activist. And then there's people that are getting paid to go down there to take their signs that are all pre-made and get a check once they go down there.
Is that who he's referring to? Is these counter protesters as being professional protesters? Or
yeah, I think he alludes to there being professional protesters among the Freedom group as well, which is insane to me, because there's not professional protesters in the Freedom.
Holy smokes.
Want to promote conflict here, and they would do anything to get their Kodak moment and to get their post. And that goes for the other side too. Yeah, I would suggest to you that this was a damned if you do and damned if you don't no win for the police, because the bottom line is, if they ended up having to use any force against the one side, of course, we know how that turned out, right? They're targeting and they're supporting one side and not the other. If there was force used against the other side, which there has been in previous protests too, may I remind you, then we hear that our officers are Nazis and this type of thing. And this gets all over the right side, rebel media and Freedom and that sort of thing. So, and that's okay. Nobody is suggesting that, the police...
Freedom is the right side.
Yes. The subject.
Yeah, if you believe in freedom...
You're right.
You're alt-right fascist who is obviously in favor of strong authoritarian boot on the neck government, which makes absolutely
no sense
at all, because these guys do not understand politics at all.
Yeah, exactly.
To that sort of criticism, we all know how that works, but the reality of it is there was no winning on this one. And when you get two groups coming together like this who seem to be pitted on having conflict, there is going to be no win. I think it's demoralizing for our officers when you're going out there dealing in one of the most complicated legal environments that I have ever seen in 30 years. And I just think that it's been sort of oversimplified by individuals, some of them elected, some of them appointed. And does that fuel the fire? Sure. Do we have counselors that are encouraging people to go out and participate in the protests? Yes, we do. Do I think that's a good idea? No, I don't. At the end of the day, I don't control anybody else, so that's fine. But I can tell you, it's pretty difficult for city employees and police officers to be going out and then seeing themselves being criticized for what they're doing without even so much as a discussion about what's really happened and seeing the big picture. And it's polarizing. I get it. What isn't polarizing in society these days? Virtually everything. And so I just would urge everybody, I think, to be able to just take a step back. It's been a very difficult 2 years for everyone, and let's find a way to work together through this problem. And I think that's how we get there. The notion that we've got to point fingers and blame, we've seen it in other areas and it hasn't worked there, and I suspect it probably won't work here either. When we get two groups coming together that are very, very staunchly opposed to one another, and their beliefs and ideologies are completely divergent, in an environment where I think people are frustrated, people are tired, and their nerves are frayed, and we get it. We see it, all of us see it in our own communities, in our own families, and I would suggest that people are just not maybe bringing their best to every situation, and so this is volatile. Absolutely, we saw it on Saturday. It was volatile Saturday, and we needed to open that road. And I guess that's what I think is that this is a time for all of us, I think with respect to the Freedom folks, people who protested in the past always kind of considered themselves part of the larger community. So when we're dealing with protest organizers and we're asking, hey, would you look at this route because there's sensitivities over here that don't exist over here? We never experienced issues with that. And I think that's because people did see themselves as part of the larger community and actually didn't want to cause unnecessary negative impact for their neighbors. And I think that's what's missing here. At the end of the day, I understand why folks in the Beltline are pissed off. I get it. But it's interesting that when you talk to people that are coming out into the community, they don't seem to have the same level of, I guess, just respect for people that we would ordinarily have. And when I say things are polarizing, that's what I mean there. So
how disruptive has this been for people who live in the area?
Well, I can say this confidently that the protest itself, the rally that occurs where people gather in the park, Central Memorial, is not even part of the Beltline. It's only the march aspect of it that they were complaining about, which on my website, I always record a front to back video of the march. I stand right at the front and then I let everyone come against me. And the longest video I ever had was a 200% speed, and it was 13 minutes long. So that would be almost 23 minutes in length from front to back because I had sped it up. So that means it's about an hour with this chunk of the group going all the way down 17th Avenue, and then they're out of there. And that's once a week, every Saturday. And that's the extent of what they would have to deal with. And don't get me wrong, we have a police escort shutting down roads and stuff like that. It is a Saturday afternoon, and I understand that being an aspect that's annoying them. And don't get me wrong, we have a right to protest as well. But they've moved now. And like he's saying here, why won't one side just cater to the other? We were going around them whenever they'd counter protest, so we wouldn't be in their way. And then one weekend, they fully blockade everywhere, and the police took an hour for them to actually move so we could go somewhere. And then the next weekend, the craziness happened. This is him talking, and then 1 weekend later, my arrest occurs. And then that weekend, we didn't even go into the Beltline. I explained to you before that we went to City Hall, and then the rally ended and everybody went back to Central Memorial. City Hall is not part of the Beltline. And so therefore, the protest is no longer terrorizing, quote unquote, these Beltline citizens. and they don't have any ground to stand on anymore because we're not going through the community at all. And like this most recent weekend, I wasn't there because I can't go to protests anymore, but I watched it live and they didn't even do a march down any streets. So there's no communities being disrupted by a march or anything. And yet these counter protesters are still showing up this weekend and the weekend we went to City Hall and going to City Hall. And it's like, your whole complaint was the Beltline. Why are you coming here and seeking conflict? You're the ones seeking conflict now. It's crazy.
So this wasn't actually the clip that I was looking for. It was actually a CTV interview that he did where he repeatedly
just
referred
trashed
to the freedom protesters as anti-democracy protesters. It was very clear to me that he had taken sides. I can't find that clip right now. Maybe Brenden, you could take a quick look and see if you could find it.
Yeah, I was already looking for it. Give me a minute.
They maybe took it down. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it seemed fairly inappropriate to me to be using those words because it showed real bias.
Oh, extremely.
But the police in Red Deer, Jayden, is the tone different there?
Yeah, well, like, okay, so we did the rallies like up until spring last spring where we kind of dropped them off, but we had cops follow us like all the time there. We actually had this is at the same location where we protest now. We had a cop sit kitty corner to us, one sit kind of and that would be off to the left from us across the road, and then we'd have another one sit way further down off to the right, and then we had one that would sit behind us in some parking lot beside this one restaurant, Cilantro and Chive, who kind of sometimes gave us problems and kind of were the ones to call the cops there. But most of the cops there, they'd be calm. We had this one that he would follow us around all the time with his camera and everything. And then right up when we stopped for the summer, and probably it was end of September or start of October, we started the rallies up again. And the cops, they were there for a couple weekends, and then they just disappeared. And then we had a couple bigger events where we moved them down into the downtown of Red Deer, and the one cop who used to follow us around with the camera.
Your audio's a little muffled. You might have your hand over your microphone. I'm not sure.
But so this one cop that always followed us, when we went down to the downtown again with these two bigger events, the one Chris got from the Whistle Stop came down and spoke. Anyways, this cop, he knew me pretty good, and he came up to me and he asked me what our route would be for the march and everything, so he could kind of shut down streets. And he did that, and he was actually really nice that day. It was weird because sometimes he'd be nice, then the next time he was your enemy, he would make it out and then the next time he was friendly again. But he kind of got the other cops to kind of shut down some of the streets temporarily so that we could march through. And then we did a march down there 2 weeks later, and same thing. And then after that cop just disappeared. He's been gone ever since, except for the other day when we were down at the courthouse for our buddy's ticket that was withdrawn. He tried to tell us, we were standing across the road from the courthouse, and he's make sure you guys stay over there. You're not allowed to cross on this side. And it's it's a public sidewalk, but we've had this officer tell us these things in the past. But anyways, besides that, we haven't had any cops give us problems here since we started them up in September again. We've had the odd one kind of stop, kind of just check it out a bit. The one weekend, actually, the one who kind of waved at us, and they just kind of take off after. I know we were doing the convoy around Red Deer because that's what we do every week, and there was a undercover unit that kind of was he ripped past us, and then a while later he was kind of joined into part of the convoy, and then he just kind of again cut out of it, ripped past us, and parked up further down the road and just kind of waited for us to kind of pass him. So I think he was just probably checking out kind of the convoy. I'm not really sure what he was doing exactly, but they've been been peaceful here. We haven't had stuff going on like what's happening in Calgary, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that in a smaller community, police are often more in touch with the community because they just, they know the people, they're more familiar with the people, and they, they're more likely that they're your next door neighbor or live around the corner. And so there's probably just instantly more respect for people on the ground in a smaller town like that rather than in a big city.
You said like you had a cop who was helping you guys organize shutting stuff down, right? And he was like, only for even a short amount of time, he seemed to be cooperating. And like the same thing has happened in Calgary. Like people, they try and say, like the police chief was saying in that video we played, how they try and talk to organizers. And it's like, there's no organizers here. There's people who like different people bring the speaker system every weekend, and like it's all crowdsourced. There's people who might volunteer a certain piece of equipment, but you can't expect anybody to have control at what point is sometimes over 10,000 people. And when the police chief is trying to say they're not cooperating, it's like if you talk to one person, like the guy comes up to you, Jayden, imagine you had 10,000 people marching behind you and the cops coming to you and telling you, okay, you need to tell all these people where they're going in what way. It's like, well, you didn't really sign up for that exactly. And they try and do this to so many people, and it's like you can't expect somebody to have control over a group of thousands of people, and for them to think that it's on us to, control thousands of people on one individual. It's like you're there as police to keep the peace, and you're there to do a job of controlling things in a way that isn't gonna escalate. You can't expect one person to control thousands, and it's just crazy that they think that's a reality.
Is that the size of the crowd you've been getting in Calgary?
So it started, don't get me wrong, started small, but yeah, I will say confidently, without a doubt, through an app I have that scans faces and the video I take from the front to back of each rally, that going back 1 month from the truckers starting their Ottawa convoy, when they got to Ottawa 1 month prior, the average was about 1,000 to 2,000. And then every worldwide rally that would occur, we'd see maybe 8 to 10,000, and that was every 4 months. They would get quite big, see 8 to 10,000 for the worldwide rally. But the day that those truckers got to Ottawa, there was 15,000 people in downtown Calgary, and every weekend after that, it was 10,000 plus to 15,000, and like that's 100%. I could confirm that, drone footage and people face scanning apps that count the numbers. And yeah, so at the point in which these counter protesters started showing up and blocking roads, there was literally 8,000 to 10,000 people marching, waiting, wondering why the march has stopped and what is occurring at the front, because there's just like blocks and blocks and blocks of people waiting to march like they had been for the last 2 years.
So that's why the politicians are so uneasy, because they don't know what to do with all these people who are clearly
waking up.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're afraid. They're afraid. But the people are just saying, free us.
Exactly.
And the politicians are saying, screw you.
Yeah, and it's like the message has been very clear from the get-go, mainly the whole dropping of mandates, which they still exist. Nobody can travel. We still got grounds to stand on there. And you saw what happened when we tried to make it a federal thing. They kicked everyone out of Ottawa. So, yeah, it's still happening in Calgary. It's still relevant. It's on us putting pressure on our premier and our local leaders here in Alberta to put pressure on our federal leaders to remove these federal mandates. And so, yeah, it's going to still occur here.
So, Jayden, you're still determined to go out there every weekend and keep on doing this? What is that the mood with the people out there? The weather's going to start to get warmer, so it should get easier for anyone that does want to come out to support these rallies. What do you see happening?
Well, okay, so I know last summer they kind of did it similar. They kind of opened everything for summer, Jason Kenney said, and the rallies kind of did die out, but we kind of stopped doing them too, because lots of the people there, they just thought we were idiots because they thought, well, we were all open. But this time again, they've kind of done the same thing around, but I I don't know. I think some people, since it's getting nicer, you know, they might just want to go and do other things now with the nice weather. But I know there's a good amount of us that will be standing there until all the mandates are dropped federal and until accountability is held for like what happened at Ottawa. It was like a month ago, people were just getting ran over by horses and tear gassed, and there hasn't been any accountability made on or held to Trudeau or any of them.
And what about the mainstream media, Devlin? How do they get treated by the Calgary police?
Well, I mean, the police sentiment for the media is, I couldn't really speak to how they feel about them, but they let the media in for sure. Like, the media gets to grab the money shots of me getting arrested and plaster that all over whatever newspapers they want, and the media gets to get the interview with the police chief. He's never going to talk to anybody independent, so they definitely have their relationship, and you can see them spin things all the time. And don't get me wrong, like, over this last week and 2 days, almost week and a half now since this arrest occurred, I've had a lot of like CTV reached out, Global reached out, they've all reached out, and their sentiment, I told them, like, if you're gonna do something, you have to use video, and I'm not just gonna give you audio clips and things like that. And to make a long story short, they've said it's been a hard 2 years. They want to start bridging gaps. The truth matters. These are all little key words that, you know, they probably know I want to hear. But like, I'll be honest, CTV ran a story, and it was quite surprising the angle they went. They were essentially totally going the route of police brutality, police overstep. The piece started with Beltline citizens saying that they were glad the protests have moved out of the Beltline community. So it kind of starts with a playing devil's advocate side to everything, and then it really did. It showed the taser injections, my bruises. It showed my video and everything of the police attacking me. And he said that to me, he was like, I can't believe this is happening in our own city. This is something I never thought I would have seen. So, like, yeah, I don't know. If you really look into it, both sides tend to be against the police as an authority figure in a lot of ways. I will never get behind defunding the police because, like we said earlier, like, I want to be able to call a police officer if I'm getting assaulted or if I'm getting robbed or if my car gets stolen or if anything, you know, but like, I'm scared and there's parts of me that don't want to now, but I don't think that we shouldn't have police, and that's not something I want to get behind. But the media
seems to me that the CTV anyway, that their tone changed when the cops used aggression toward the counter protesters. It was that weekend, and the story that I saw that they ran that in fact,
saying the cops were in the wrong, essentially.
Yeah. And here it is here. I guess maybe it was Global News. Brenden has a clip up here, and maybe we can bring it up now. I've got it here. And this is, I think, the one that I was looking for that I couldn't find.
No, it absolutely is. I remember.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay, so let's get this up. Yeah, right there. So we'll bring that up, and let's let this roll. This shows both the tone and the change in tone for the mainstream media because of the aggression used against the counter protesters. Plus, this is where the Calgary police chief, I think, set the tone for the use of more aggression, which they used against you.
Yeah, it was this following weekend that I would have got arrested, I believe. Yeah.
Anti-COVID mandate protesters and counter-protesters. Police got involved to separate the sides using bikes to push the counter-protesters back. That led to some controversy of its own, with many questioning police actions and what will be happening moving forward. Police Chief Mark Neufeld joins us now with the latest. Good morning to you, Chief.
Good morning, Dallas.
I understand the service met on Tuesday to talk about what to do as a force moving forward. Can you tell us about that meeting?
Yeah, you know what? I can tell you that we did meet, and we continue to, actually. This is only actually Wednesday morning. So we continue to look at a number of options and examine what happened last weekend. I think we saw an inflection point for sure, as I've said publicly. We have historically seen high degrees of cooperation from protest groups in the city, including what I'm now calling the anti-democracy group. Certainly, we've seen the most recent outlay of what their objectives are, and I think they're sort of hard to understand and incoherent. I think we all thought that after the mandates were reduced.
Yeah.
He just calls the freedom protesters anti-democracy movement, and at the same time, they have a visual with the anti-protesters and the bicycles, and they're all shoving. It's designed to give you an image in your head when he's talking about anti-democracy protesters, and it wants to shine the light, saying that these anti-protest protesters are like it's trying to. The visuals there are all switched, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's inflammatory for sure. It shows bias. I've laid all that out. There he is saying it. He's going to say it again here as well.
And he says we're hard to understand, like that the protest message is hard to understand. Like, what part of rescind mandates is hard to understand?
Yeah.
What part of accountability is hard to understand? Which
is double speak for saying you're all a bunch of nut bars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unbelievable.
And lifted here in Alberta, that we'd see a subsiding of the
See, and he's saying because they lifted the mandates, why didn't you go away? Well, because not all the mandates have been lifted. Because you still can't get on a plane if you're not vaxxed, because a lot of people have still lost their jobs, because there are still many measures that are in place, and it's pretty clear that the mandates that have been lifted can be reimposed at in the blink of an eye. And probably
the Calgary court system still has a masking mandate. Every hospital and medical center in Calgary has a masking mandate. You can't enter any of those places without a mask on. And they're doing that at a local municipal level.
Yeah.
Protests, and we haven't, and it appears that we're not going to. And so we're looking at different options as to how we can manage this differently than other protests, because I think, again...
So he wants to manage this protest differently than other protests.
4 days later, injunction.
Yeah.
Most of the groups that we deal with are quite cooperative with the police. They're respectful of the community, and they actually want to be able to exercise their Section 2 charter rights, but they also want to do it in a way that doesn't, negatively impact the community. And this group certainly doesn't seem to be in that camp anymore.
Is there any truth to that, Devlin?
No. As you can see over the last 2 weekends, and I've already described that they've left the Beltline. These rallies and everything have moved from the Beltline. So if you can't say they're not seeking conflict or not being cooperative and trying to, exercise their charter right to protest peacefully, I don't know what is. And
so where was he getting this, and where does this mindset come from?
Well, they're trying to frame the optic of the counter protesters and protesters wanting to have a clash, which never occurred. Like I told you, the only time they ever encountered us was when we'd go on our planned police escorted route march. And that was the only time we'd ever encounter them. And we'd go around them. We'd divert down a different street. Sometimes they would only stand on the side of the street and the march would go by while the police stood in between us and made sure crazy stuff didn't happen. One of those times, the counter protesters cracked a smoke bomb and threw a smoke grenade into the crowd. And these are all just escalations from the counter protester side while peaceful people tried to go around them. And then one weekend, and this is the weekend following his speech coming out in both videos that we've watched, the police had a blockade set up with the counter protesters all the way across the road and then blocked off all these other avenues so the protests couldn't divert anywhere, couldn't go around them, and then let it sit there and bubble for an hour before the police finally opened up an avenue and let the protest go by. And so that's him now saying that we aren't cooperating and we were seeking escalation and stuff. And it's like, there's 20 people. All you have to do is move them off the road to let the 10,000 of us march by. And they didn't do that. And they're saying we're not cooperating when now the massive group of thousands of people don't even go through the Beltline anymore because everybody there is realizing what our police are trying to do here and are like, we're the good guys, we'll cooperate.
There are now calls on social media to get more people to join the counter protests on Saturday. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, the anti-mandate protesters vow to continue until their demands are met. So what are you expecting to see this weekend?
And let me ask you something. What do the counter protesters want? What do they want?
I mean, they wanted us to leave. That was it. They wanted us to not be there anymore. And that was it. I mean, their signs, if I'm going to be honest, you'd have a laugh at some of their signs. None of that freedom crap here. You're in Canada. There was things like, we want more sick days. Like, okay. And things just like nonsensical things.
More sick days because of COVID?
I don't know. Like, what does that have to do with these people here marching? Like, sure, get in our crowd. We could get behind some more sick days. Like, yeah, I don't know.
So they want more, like, do they want more lockdowns? They want more masks? They want extra vaccinations?
They want to see everybody bending the knee just as much as they bent the knee. That's what they want. They think equality means everybody has to stoop down to their level. And that's
acquiescence.
Yeah, it's not what's going to happen. And everybody who has a backbone can't even imagine trying to bend the knee to the level they have. And they can't stand that.
Well, I guess it's not surprising. I see that on social media as well. And at times like this is typically what we'll see. It definitely complicates matters for police because certainly as we get ready to deploy for the weekend, we would like to be able to just deal with one group, but that may not be the reality. And if that's the case, we'll deal with what comes. But certainly, to decrease volatility and to be able to allow officers to focus where I think they need to be focused, it would be much easier if we could focus on one group.
In terms of the cost of resources to the Calgary Police Service in being at these protests, the bike units, the Hawks helicopter, the manpower, how much is the service spending on this from the CPS budget?
Yeah, so in 2021, Dallas, the numbers came in at around 1.9 million to police protests for the year 2021. Now, obviously, those costs are being incurred in 2022 as well. But it's not just, as I've said before, not just the hard cost for people coming in on overtime or that type of thing. It's the opportunity cost. Officers are being brought in increasing numbers from all around the city. And when they're downtown policing protests like this, they're certainly not doing other very valuable work that they could and should be doing. And so I think that's a real cost there too that we don't see in terms of finances or numbers. But I certainly think it's there and it's impactful.
In your remarks on Monday, you said that these two sides are both looking for a fight, but for months there was no counter-protest movement outside of calls to 311. So this movement in the streets showed up really as a result of frustration from inaction and disruptions in the Beltline community. How do you think it got to this point?
Is that true?
Yeah, so there was nothing ever. They never showed up, and they're trying to say she even quoted him saying that he's saying we're both looking for a fight. It's like we weren't looking for a fight for the last 2 years. Nothing's changed. And now all of a sudden this group shows up looking for a fight. So it's like none of us are looking for a fight here. I don't know why you'd even
what was the
state
motivation for them showing up? Was it really because you've been so disruptive that you're making life unbearable for people? Or are these counter protesters down there for other political reasons?
Well, I mean, in all honesty, they're trying to hide behind the guise of it being an unbearable situation. And that's absolutely not the reality. The amount of businesses and business owners who would come out and be happy to see us, or waitresses would come out on their break and be happy to see us. And don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, the streets are getting shut down. I can understand the annoyance of wanting to leave your house or your apartment building and not be able to drive for the 15 minutes that a crowd walks by you. But in the grand scheme of things, what's happened over these last 3 years, we've been a lot more inconvenienced by our government than any kind of 15-minute march in your community. And you live in the Beltline core, the downtown core of a city that's loud. What do you expect?
So I haven't been there, but it's pretty obvious. Let's call it what it is. You've got a bunch of people who are tired of all this government overreach. They're tired of all these mandates. They want the masks to come off. They want their freedom back. They're tired of these stupid politicians ruling their lives in crazy ways and making life unbearable for them because they're inconveniencing the entire country. And then on the other side, you have some far left radical protesters who always make up a bunch of BS, spin up a narrative, lobby the media and lobby local politicians and politicians in general by making a bunch of phone calls, calling in to complain to the police service, to gin up a reaction, a response from local authorities so that they get momentum behind whatever their movement is. But that's what it is. It's not, those protesters were not down there because they're local residents who are upset with disruptions in their community. Those people are down there because they are political activists.
Exactly.
They're Marxists, they're communists, they're far left-wing socialists, they're New Democrats, they're the hardcore liberals who are on the left wing of the party. They're the hardliners, and they're the same people that show up at all the protests all the time and always will.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if you went back and looked at video of the people who are there counter protesting and then went back 5 years ago and went to some protests where you had a bunch of left-wing causes, if you went to some BLM marches, you'd see those same people, and those would be the people leading it, involved. You'll see those people involved with those political parties on that side of the fence. That's the truth. That's what's really going on. And all this spin about it's so disruptive, their local residents came out to counter protest. It's a bunch of bunk.
Yeah.
That's bunk.
Yeah. It's like you said, like they call and they try and get the rally of these politicians and the police by calling in and stuff. It's convenient that they're calling and getting the same rally of politicians that are also going out on social media and calling for people to go and stand up against this and don't like the protest already. You know what I mean?
They manufacture this stuff and they know how to do it because they do it all the time.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Joe, you get Bernadette to go and you guys make these phone calls. You get your team together. You phone in and lob send all these complaints into the cops. Peter and Frank,
Tony
your
Walker.
job is to call all the politicians and complain to them, and then you call the media, and then the cops because if you complain to the cops, they're compelled to respond. Yeah. They have to respond. It's their job. If they get complaints from the community, and they know it. So and they're playing this game.
This Courtney Walcott guy has a Twitter post going back weeks saying, call it in. Everybody needs to report it in.
Yeah, like he's rallying for it. Exactly.
That's right. That's exactly right. You see, what I'm saying is laid right out. It's on public display even. They're not even trying to hide it. They know how the system works, and they're playing the system to get the political result that they want. They're weaponizing the cops by going through these procedures to get a response from local government and local police.
And
that's what they're doing.
It doesn't take much. It just takes one person operating a 411 complaint line, answering 30 calls, the same 30 people who look at this guy all the time on Twitter, right? They get these complaints, and before you know it, you've ruined somebody's day, and the numbers will show, 30 people called in to complain about the protest, blah, blah, blah.
And make no mistake, the same BS was going on in Ottawa when they were saying, that it's disrupting all the local. Yeah, I'm sure that some people down there didn't like all the honking. Okay, but the truth of the matter is it was a coordinated, choreographed phone campaign of complaints from political opponents the same people who are down there marching with hammer and sickle flags and counter-protesting in small groups at the other end, eventually during the Ottawa protest. That's what's going on at all of these things. And the politicians, our local politics across the country has been infiltrated by, it's dominated by left-wing politicians, largely.
Even at local level, it's scary.
Yes. And so they respond, and they're involved. They're involved in all of that. And they've captured the police services in the same way. And the cops know it. The police
and the
chiefs
local
know
media.
It.
Not
And the
even
local
just
media.
not even the big global media. We're talking like small little publications that are only put out in the city that are totally captured and being entirely used as like a platform to push these agendas.
Yes. You got to understand how this stuff works to really get what it's all about. All this crap, that we're seeing right here on the news right now, it's all spin, man. And it's all choreographed. It's like a dance routine.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to people in the community, and as recently as yesterday, speaking with business improvement area representatives there, it becomes clear, I think, that folks were sort of, frustrated, as you can understand and appreciate. I think they were kind of gritting their teeth because I think there was a thought that the mandates and the restrictions were going to be lifted, and people could see that based on the reducing, case counts and the projections that had been provided. And I think they thought that the protest would subside. And then when they didn't, I think that's when things really became frustrating for people. And I think that's what's caused the boiling point here.
And now we waited for that, and the protest did not stop. So the blame has shifted a little bit. As you said, you feel like police are blamed.
He should be asking himself why they haven't subsided.
Yeah, they don't
and
even
try to
touch
find
on
out what the real reason is. What's the real concern among these people? Like, does he think that they're down, that these people are down there just marching around for the good of their health, that they don't want to be doing other things on their weekends or their time off? He's got to have rocks in his head.
It's willful ignorance. Like I said, they're choosing to be ignorant and appear like they don't know when they know. They know.
You don't get 10,000 people out marching down the street just because they want to piss people off.
Yeah, exactly.
Devlin, can I ask you something real quick?
Yeah.
So in downtown Calgary, is it historical, pre-pandemic, that there would be like downtown festivals at the Beltway?
Oh yeah. So like, I don't know if you've ever heard the term the Red Mile in relation to Calgary, but 17th Avenue, which is the Beltline, and that's the area we were marching. It's notorious for becoming just a shut down party street. Like the lanes get shut down, the sidewalks get extended, and especially during the time when the Calgary Flames are doing at all good in the playoffs, it becomes the Red Mile, and the whole thing becomes a party avenue for like 7 days a week, every night. And it's known for having Badlands Music Festival, which is a massive music festival that sets up and happens for a week straight with huge electronic artists that just pound until 3 a.m. in the morning. And like this occurs in the Beltline downtown area. And there's a massive steel freight train system that goes right through the Beltline at all hours of the day and all the time. So you hear massive trains coming through at 3 a.m. and like you're supposed to be used to noise at that point.
So the city has been no stranger to disruptions of whether it be festivals or other meetings where people get together and they're usually quite loud. So
yeah.
A lot of what these people are complaining about is like a moot point almost.
Exactly.
Crazy story. I just wanted to inquire after that.
Yeah.
Protesters, what do you think the Calgary Police Service's role is here?
Well, you know what, and it's not so much, it's not uncommon, I think, for people to be frustrated and for the police as the most visible sort of arm of government that's dealing with these things to be blamed. And so I'm not saying that that's problematic. I guess what I'm saying, though, is that I think now is a time where I think the citizens of Calgary and the Beltline want to see their leaders working together in their best interests. And so I don't think this is time for blaming and shaming. I think it's actually time to get together and do the hard work that's required and focus forward.
But you're the guy who just sat there and said that you have You are blaming the freedom protesters because you say that they're anti-democracy protesters. So you're sitting here saying no blame and shame, but you're clearly taking a side.
Yeah.
This is
so
ridiculous.
our role is an obvious one. I mean, we're responsible for policing these protests, making sure that the community is safe and that we don't have violence and property damage. But it does go farther than that. I think these protesters are from the anti-democracy group are actually pushing the limits of Section 2.
So now he's blaming
The
and
anti-democracy
shaming
group.
in one breath.
And Brenden, to comment as well, the Calgary Stampede. Man, the whole downtown core and Beltline is a party for the entirety of that Calgary Stampede. So, yeah.
And what's that? That's
charter.
a week-long event?
And that's how we ended up seeing things
Yeah.
like, Freedom Convoy, Freedom Rodeo, Freedom Breakfast, this type of thing. This is much different. This is a different type of protest than we've seen it in the past. We thought they would stop and they won't.
Is it different?
No, that's the beauty of it. What's changed? Please tell me. I have a great documentation going back for a year and a half showing the exact same formula, format, and occurrences for these rallies that hasn't changed in any way, shape, or form. So please tell me what's changed.
Now they're articulating that basically we want to do whatever we want to do. And so our job is to figure out how we...
What does that even mean?
Do you get that do you have that on a placard? We want to do whatever we want to do.
Yeah, like to my understanding of what he's coming at with that sentiment of we want to do what we want to do is the sentiment of there's 10,000 people. So if you tell one person, hey, there's a blockade here, we got to get the rally to go around it. And then you can't go around it. Like I said, they were trying to line it up like we weren't cooperating. And we are cooperating, and he's trying to say like we're doing what we want to do. It's like there's 10,000 people who are going to do what they want to do, and they're following the police orders.
And I know you weren't there, Jayden, but what do you think? Don't know? I don't know what the heck to make of that. Well, let's let the police chief talk some more.
sort of bring in Section 1, which is about placing reasonable limits on those abilities to protest in the interests of community safety and well-being. So that's our role in this.
Okay, can you see how people want to hold CPS accountable here in some way for it getting to this point?
Yeah, I do. I think at the end of the day...
but you see the nature of that question, allowing it to get to this point? The premise there, the foundation of that question is it's rooted in the idea that the police should be cracking down in some way. Do you get that?
The Calgary Sun's headline once I was arrested and they used that picture was "Crackdown" in the Beltline. So yeah, they wanted some crackdown.
They wanted. They're looking for. They want the cops to go in there and crack down. They're putting pressure on the cops. There's pressure on the cops to break you guys up. Well, yeah. I say you guys, I mean the protesters, but you're there, documenting. Jayden, yeah. You are a demonstrator, but you're not in Calgary, so it's just. But maybe they want to come and break you guys up in Red Deer too.
People are frustrated and they're tired in this pandemic environment. So it's not surprising that people are looking for somebody to blame. And as I say, that's okay. If it's going to be us, that's okay. I really do feel for our officers on the front line that are doing this work because it's very difficult, complex work. But the reality of it is they're doing a good job. They have been doing a good job. And I'm going to tell folks this. We continue to be engaged in this work, and we are there for communities like the Beltline and Calgarians all the way around.
You know what? Part of the problem is here. It's just occurred to me. The problem is that the politicians are pushing this problem off on the cops. They're making it a problem for the cops. But the problem and the solution rests with the politicians who have created this problem. And they're just saying, you know what, cops, go deal with these guys. They don't like what we've done. Too effing bad for them. Go deal with them. Get rid of them. That's what they're saying. And the cops are too stupid to realize that they're being manipulated and used, or maybe they're just willing. Because maybe they're outside.
If they resist doing that, they get told that they're bad. They get interviewed by people by Global saying, how could you guys let it get this far?
Right.
And I mean, the politicians did the same thing with these mandates. They handed down the responsibility to business owners, to managers, to the cashier, to the person who just cleaned the toilet and is now asking for your vaccine proof. they handed down responsibility there as well. And it's like, and the same thing, if you don't follow in line, you're in trouble. And it's crazy.
They've made a big mess. They're not willing to clean it up. So they're just telling the cops to just kind of deal with the people who don't like the mess.
Exactly.
But leave
make
the
it go
we're going to
away.
leave the mess over here. We're going to leave the mess. We're not going to clean it up. But it's a bloody mess.
Yeah.
It's a bloody mess. And it's come to this.
This is a complex situation. I can assure you that we are working
Actually, it's not. It's pretty simple, really.
very hard on dealing with this. We've got partners engaged, and we are going to be there for you, and we're going to work this through.
You said we have to work together. I assume that means with the city as well, as Mayor Jyoti Gondek has called this a parade, not a protest, says they need support by the Calgary Police.
That's
hey,
not
if
accurate,
it's a
is
parade, does that mean I can go because it's not a protest? Like, I don't know. Like,
I don't know. That probably could be debated, being like, well, the mayor deemed it was a parade.
The city did meet yesterday on this. It resulted in a letter to the Police Commission because that's really all the city can do at this point. Meantime, Police Commission member Heather Campbell tweeted out a link following the clash last weekend to a site that outlines the process for filing formal complaints against the police, saying she believes there are a few people who may require that information. How many complaints have been filed? What does the service do with those? And how does this make you feel?
You know what? Well, I think it's a pragmatic release. At the end of the day, when you do see, and we saw the public reaction to what they saw on social media, and so that's completely understandable. Factually, that is the process. The process is available, obviously, on the police website. The process is available on the commission's website. You know, when we have commissioners tweeting it out during the event itself, you worry that there's perhaps a bias there. I think officers feel like there may not be support because there isn't even a discussion or a question or a briefing about what's happened just yet. But I actually think sending that out is fine because I think after an event like that, you know, people may factually need that. But I think the unintended consequence is that coming from somebody who's on the police commission is that it sends the message that there is no support for the people doing the difficult work on the ground.
We are out of time, Chief, but I do want to leave any final words to you.
You know what, just to reiterate, I think, you know, there's lots said and that sort of thing about the issues. I can tell you that we completely understand what's going on and sympathize with the folks in the Beltline. And so we are fully engaged in this. We're being very thoughtful about the way that we approach it, not trying to be emotional and just react sort of in the moment. And I think you'll see a very different approach on Saturday. This is a difficult issue. We'll continue to work on the coming weekends. And I think there'll be a time in the future to look back and say, hey, was there opportunities to be able to intervene differently or sooner or whatever? And we'll do that. But right now our folks are focused on the issue that I think Calgarians want us to focus on. And that's the issue right in front of us this coming Saturday.
Still being in the thick of things, Calgary's Police Chief Mark Neufeld.
And that was the interview that led up to everything that happened with you, Devlin, right?
Yeah. 4 days prior to that, or after that, they put out that injunction the night before the next rally, which was trying to shut down everything and anything to do with the rally in a park. And yeah, we've discussed all that already. So yeah, this just led up to the insane violence we saw from the police the next weekend.
So let's ask your neck. Does your neck feel like they were neutral?
No, not very neutral whatsoever. The chiropractor can vouch for it as well. He's not wanting to do any adjustments because things are still swelling up and getting worse. So yeah, they were not very neutral whatsoever.
Okay. Wow.
I mean,
so
at this point going forward, I'm happily eager and willing to share anything to do with this case in the public eye because don't get me wrong, it's not like I want that, but this was a pretty public arrest and every newspaper in Calgary ran it as their front page. It's gone to other places as well. And following it, the police chief has come out and had statements about it and everything. So I'm
definitely. The police chief mentioned your case specifically?
Not me by name, but yeah, he did say that that one of the protesters was arrested for assaulting a police officer. And that was in the statement that he made coming out afterwards. So they're going full force with me having assaulted a police officer. And yeah, I think, I mean, like I said earlier, I want accountability for this, and that's all I'm going for in the end, because there's some people who definitely stepped out of line here in very, very big ways that should not be able to just rescind back into the shadows and step out of line again in the future.
I want to get your opinions on this. That fire that you're seeing there has nothing to do with the convoy. It's just in a multi-feed window from northwest Oklahoma. But these other feeds, most of them are from the People's Convoy, which is still staged at the Hagerstown Speedway, I believe, or they might be on the road now. I'm not sure, but they are now heading back across the country toward California after sort of driving around the Beltway in Washington, D.C. to make their presence known. And they did get some meetings with politicians there as they try to address the issue of medical mandates in the United States. And they have been inspired by the Canadian convoy. Jayden, do you think that this People's Convoy is having any impact? What's your impression of what's going on south of the border, and even with other convoys around the world that have been inspired by what you witnessed in Ottawa and what you see going on in Canada today? What do you think? Sorry, I can't hear you, Jayden. Are you still there?
Still alive. Crap.
Are you still there? Well, let's throw it to you, Devlin, and get your thoughts while Jayden gets his phone back online there.
Of course. I mean, as far as what I'm watching down happen across the border, it's great to see, and I'm happy to see it. And I was saying this when the convoy in Canada started out, that this is the opportunity to put something like this on the world stage, because the ball was really rolling for that thing to get big. And as we saw, it got big. So, yeah, I mean, in Canada here, we really put all this kind of protest against the government overreach with these mandates was put on the world stage. And now watching it kind of unfold in different places it's amazing to see. And I'm glad that they, feel inspired for once. Canada was leading the charge for freedom in standing against the government, when you'd really kind of expect the United States to be ahead of the curve with that.
Okay, we're just going to run this little promo again while we see if we can get Jayden back online.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
And you can donate at freedomreporters.com. If you'd like to support our work here, you can click the hot link in the YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble descriptions. And you can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to make sure that you receive notifications whenever we post new videos or go live. And we really appreciate the support we've had so far. And you can also support Devlin in his legal battles as well, which is very important. We know that his story is extremely vital, and we'd encourage you to support him as well, because he's facing a big battle with his charges. And we'll put up his donation information again before we sign off. Jayden, can you hear us now? Are you there, Jayden? No audio with Jayden. Is he muted? That's why. There we go. How about now? Can we hear you now? Still can't hear Jayden.
Oh, that's too bad. I can see his footage isn't choppy or anything like that.
Yeah, for whatever reason, his audio isn't coming through. Maybe he'll. You know what, Jayden? Why don't you sign off and just click the link and log back in? I'll let you back in and reset, and then your audio will probably come back online for us. Okay. So he'll sign out and then just log back in.
So have you been tracking this convoy across the border pretty well then?
As much as we can. We've had some interviews with people down there. We've had some some people on the ground. Some of them left who are helping us. Yesterday they announced that they're heading back to California, though. The thing about the People's Convoy is they've tried to remain entirely lawful, entirely peaceful, and not do anything that would be too disruptive. They've taken steps to make sure that they don't get anybody arrested, that they don't that they want to make sure that rigs, trucks aren't confiscated. They don't want to have a repeat of what happened in Ottawa. They don't want to give the authorities any reason to take any action against them at all, right? So that's been their approach. But as a result, they've sort of been reduced, and I totally get it, and I actually support them not getting people arrested. But so they've just been reduced to driving around the Beltway around Washington, D.C. They haven't been able to really go down into Washington, save for a couple of occasions when they got a few trucks down there. But no blockades, no shutting down, no parking on the streets, causing any disruption at all.
Right.
So, as I say, they've had some meetings, but it's a difficult situation because I'm not sure how you get leverage without causing some disruption with your protest. You need to get people's attention. If all you do is drive around, basically you're just a big rolling billboard. And I'm not criticizing what they're doing at all. It's a challenge for them, and they're trying to find a workaround. And one of the things they're doing now, I think, and it might be the right move, is to head back toward California, where some new legislation is that they've become aware of, that they feel needs to be protested. And by rolling across the country as an actual convoy again, they can stop in town after town and build support again as sort of a rally or convoy, where they can meet with other smaller convoys in each of these communities, lend their support for demonstrations that are going on in other towns to build support that way. But man, I don't know. It's the anti-freedom movement, as I would characterize it, the pro-lockdown, whatever you want to call it, right? The people working against them, they've got it figured out. Like they've got you at every turn, right? And like in Canada, the government basically declared war on the truckers.
Yeah, pretty much.
Freezing bank accounts, using war-like measures against
stealing assets, like literal physical assets.
Yep. So, and they've taken similar steps. That's sort of what they did. They used very harsh measures against demonstrators from January 6th in the U.S.
Yeah.
Much of the same sort of thing, right? You take one little step over the line this way, and even if you don't, they'll make a new law so that they can come and get you, right? So
it's funny that our police chief sits there and says that, like, you laughed at it, that it's a delicate and confusing and like hard situation. It's like, go look at anything that occurred south of the border, like during BLM riots, during anything to do with George Floyd. That's a delicate and hard to handle situation. I don't know what he's even talking about. Like,
it's become so ridiculous that you're not supposed to believe your own eyes anymore. I've seen CBC reports where they're describing violent insurrection, occupation, a siege of Ottawa, when they've got some university professor on there describing it that way, while they're running footage of literally kids on bouncy castles and people making heart shapes with their hands out truck windows. And they're trying to tell people that the people in Ottawa were violent in some way. And it was the exact opposite. And yet you watch the BLM riots and things are burning to the ground in places in the US. And you've got the mainstream media sitting there saying it's a mostly peaceful protest. And, we're supposed to tolerate all of this and understand it and just go with it. So much so that those riots inspired thousands of people to come out because they were told by the media to do that at the height of a pandemic when everybody was supposed to be locked down because it was such a dangerous virus that if anybody went outside and gathered with more than one other, if you got close to even one other person, that the virus was going to get you and spread through society and kill half the population. But then they said, but it's okay for you guys to go and protest for this.
Fear mongering at its finest.
Oh yeah, it was just crazy. Are you back, Jayden? Can we hear you now?
Yeah, I think you can hear me. Can you?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I'm not sure what happened there.
So after being to Ottawa, seeing what happened, what are your thoughts on the Freedom Convoy and everything still going on in Canada, inspiring other demonstrations in the U.S. and around the world?
Well, I think something the Freedom Convoy did was it really showed the power of the people and what we can all accomplish when we come together for like a common goal. We pretty much when we got down there, well, the whole way there, every stop we made, there was people that had like lunches made, handing out to all of us. Once we got down in Ottawa, everyone was helping out. There were some people like cooking food for everyone. There were other people like every morning when it would snow, there'd be people out first thing shoveling off all the snow, keeping everything clean. People started helping the truckers get gas. And once the cops kind of started so there were people that were driving quads up, kind of hauling a bit of gas to take to the truckers. And then the cops kind of stopped them from being able to do that. So we just kind of brought sleds up and wagons full of gas. Some people would just be literally carrying these big jerry cans down the street. But we all worked together, and it just showed that we built pretty much our own little community in the downtown Ottawa for a month, and it just shows the power of what we can do when we all come together for a common goal. And I think that was a important thing that hasn't really been looked at too much on one of the good things of the convoy. For the People's Convoy, I don't know. I honestly kind of feel bad. I haven't been looking down at theirs in the US as much as they looked at ours, but I think it's probably doing good down there.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the part of the challenge for those guys is they're not getting really any mainstream media coverage to speak of. So
there's a conflict with the narrative at the same time. I mean, the 24-hour news cycle shifted from Ottawa to Ukraine in the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So are these protests in Calgary continuing, Devlin?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak for the size of them continuing because it seems like these police have done somewhat of a job of scaring people away. As I had explained before, there was a lot of kids and families. Anywhere you looked, you'd see a stroller half the time. So definitely could see those kinds of crowds starting to turn away after seeing the optics of what's happening. But I watched the live stream of this last weekend, which would have been the only one now that's occurred since this whole arrest. And there was still a lot of people there, about 2,000 to 3,000 people. And they're now gathering in front of City Hall or in front of the court center because they can't go to parks like we have for the last 2 years. But as far as my understanding is, they are not stopping till these mandates are dropped. And beyond that, I'm sure the sentiment of thousands is going to be making sure this government overreach can't happen again. And it's planned for next Saturday, in stone. There's 100% one happening this coming weekend. So they aren't.
You know what? You know what scares me here is I think that the cops, politicians, but the cops have handled this so wrong.
Yeah.
Because for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Is a law of nature.
Yeah.
And my fear is that they'll get what they want. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you take away, people have been locked down, masked up, injected. People have lost their jobs, businesses. There's so much frustration and even anger out there that has so far percolated to the surface through expressions of patriotism, love, and neighborliness, and a very Canadian way.
Yeah.
My fear is that by doing what they did this past weekend, and if they crush the protesters, if they take away that vent, that release valve for the frustration for the people who have been clearly frustrated to the point where they're willing to spend every Saturday out on the streets in the cold, you take that relief valve away and you're just going to build the pressure. And if you push hard like that, I'm fearful that they'll get a negative reaction.
Yeah, I can see where you're going to, with people not wanting to get pushed, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yep.
And we're in Canada, and it's going to take a lot of pushing, I think, for people to eventually even contemplate pushing back here. And I mean, with that being said, that means there's going to have to be a lot of pushing come from them. And I don't want to see it get to that point at all. I feel like the way that this goes forward is they want this to stop, and if we stop, they get what they want. But they also want this to turn into an optic of us being aggressive and us being violent, and then that's also them getting what they want. And it's like, how do you find a middle ground when you have them attacking you, not wanting you to be peacefully protesting, and not giving up at the same time? And
how long do they expect the people to stand there and have the crap beaten out of them before somebody, person? I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to be straight up. The cops are damn lucky that they're in Canada and dealing with a bunch of Canadians who are peaceful and not radicalized in any way. They're lucky they've been dealing with a group like this. They're damn lucky.
Very true. Yeah, and I mean, you can point to a lot of instances that have occurred that would have gone a lot worse if it wasn't here in Canada with peaceful people, and that's easy to say.
But I don't care whether they're Canadians or not. The cops need to wise up, get back to community-based policing, start treating people with respect, because you can't just keep beating the shit out of people. You can't beat the shit out of people weekend after weekend and not expect somebody to push back.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said before, where it seems like their number one goal is to stop this or to have it escalate to be able to make us seem violent.
Right.
And exactly, yeah, and exactly, it's just number one thing is stopping it. And I said how it seems like the numbers may be dwindling and people are scared to come out and stuff, and that's why my number one thing here is accountability, because I want to show people that these guys can be held accountable. And it may be a very hard uphill battle at this point, but if I can show people that it's doable, and I mean, in a perfect world, we could use this to reform aspects of the Calgary police that need reform. But that's obviously a golden opportunity that isn't going to present itself, and I have to fight for that.
I've said here repeatedly that people need to remain completely lawful. completely peaceful.
Yeah.
Because you can't give them what they want. And we need to, and anybody fighting for freedom at this point needs to start thinking creatively and find creative ways to fight for freedom. But that being said, seeing what I've seen in the last month from Calgary Police, from Ottawa Police, from other police services, if there's escalating violence, and the violence that has unfolded right now, and this is my opinion, it's on the cops. It's not on the protesters. It was on the cops in Ottawa. It's on the politicians. If there's blood, it's on their hands because they have provoked this. If there's more violence, it's on the cops because they have provoked it. The police chief, with his words in that interview right before last weekend, set the stage for it. Those were inflammatory comments, biased comments. Those were comments that were directed straight at one group. The group that a group of politicians want shut down. And they came after you, Devlin.
Yeah.
And you're not even really you're not an organizer. You're not one of the main protesters. You were down there working as a journalist, but they came after you because they're afraid of you too. They're very afraid of you, and they're afraid of people like me and Brenden, and they're afraid of Jayden too, although he looks much nicer and kinder than I do. But it's what they're playing with fire.
It's the fire for freedom, man. And the fire for freedom over these last 3 years has grown exponentially because people saw how important it was. And if they just had a tiny spark of freedom inside of them, it's grown. And it may have grown because they came to a rally like this and had so many other people that had that fire for freedom around them. And it's our politicians and the tools they're using being their headpiece of the mainstream media and their arms and legs being the police. They're using them, and those guys are now getting burnt by this fire for freedom that they're trying to snuff out.
So, folks, we are here fighting the information side of this war. Devlin's helping in that regard because he's an independent journalist. We're fighting for that here on the Maverick News channel. You can donate to support our work at freedomreporters.com. We need your help, obviously, to help pay the bills here and expand what we're doing. And Devlin, you also need some help because you've got legal bills to pay now because you've been targeted. How can people support you and help you out?
Well, if you want to know context or information or even share with somebody what's occurred here, you can go to my website, awakeningthepeople.net. The first button there is going to be the Calgary police legal battle that's occurring. That is something you can go and share with anybody you want. The information on that website will tell you how you can donate. It's Devlin Legal Fund at protonmail.com. And any email transfer amount sent there is going straight into the lawyer's trust fund account. This is the website where if you go to awakeningthepeople.net/legal battle, or you click on the Calgary police brutality case right on the front page, it'll bring you here. And yeah, any support is extremely appreciated. If email transfer is not an option, you can contact me at that email and we can set up any kind of other thing that you have in mind. But support these guys too, because these guys are doing what needs to be done. And this is true journalism, what you've watched here for the last nearly 3 hours. These are people that actually do what the world needs to see. And these guys deserve all the support as well.
Yeah, well, we need to bring your story to light and highlight what you're going through, because you're right there on the front lines, man. Like, and what you went through with those cops beating you and tasering you while you were down.
Yeah.
No need to taser you. That is absolutely, in my estimation, excessive use of force.
Yeah.
a guy who's pinned down in a chokehold, going nowhere, and they taser you.
Yeah, my lawyer is a kid in a candy shop right now, to say the least. He has a background in police brutality. We've gone over this, so he was very eager to take this case because he understands exactly what they've done wrong and has very much experience in bringing them to justice. So I'm super excited to not only get these bogus charges thrown out and defend myself as I should, but to push a lawsuit against the Calgary police for sure.
I'm so disappointed. I feel so lost as a Canadian these days, you know.
Your sentiment is shared by millions, I'm sure.
But that's why we brought you in too, Jayden, because your experience with, and to just kind of help wrap up your story, that's why I wanted you here tonight too, because your experience has been one of, you know, positivity. You saw all the love out there, right? All the camaraderie, and you've got the car to prove it. And as I said, to me, seeing the convoy across the country, it was like a national moment, an outpouring of pride. Your car is a symbol of that. And I could see, you know, in the future, your car being in a museum someplace with your signatures all over it. If Canadians continue to embrace this as a national moment of pride, where a bunch of truckers made the difference and saved freedom and saved our country from plunging into darkness and tyranny. That's what I see, an opportunity to embrace all of this. And your car could end up in some car museum someplace with all the signatures all over it, so that 20, 30 years from now, people go back and there's that classic car of Jayden's that has all the signatures on it, that Canadian symbol of freedom, the red Hyundai, right? Which might not seem like much right now, but honestly, in the future, that's what it would represent.
Yeah, and it'll remind them maybe to stand up instead of just sitting down and letting the government bulldoze right over them, you know?
Yeah. So do you think you might go back to Ottawa at some point if they were to do something out there? I mean, right now everything's focused in, you know, locally, I guess, right?
You know, there's a very good chance I would. I honestly left the convoy, left from Ottawa on the 16th with the possible thought of, you know, if it was still going in a couple months, to head back up there, because I seen that there's some motorcycle convoy headed up there, and it honestly did. It seemed like, who knows, we could have been up there for months, you know, and we had already, at that point, I had already been up there for quite a while.
We did see trucks roll through there. I think it was this past weekend. So would you agree that it's far from over?
Oh yeah, definitely. When I seen that there's some coast to coast convoy, and that's actually, it has to do with the bikers now except that's quite a while from now. It's gonna be in I think maybe June or July, and they're planning on rolling to the coast and then heading up to Parliament and want as many people as they can to join them or whatever.
Yeah,
we're still not quite into biker weather yet in Canada, but we are getting there.
Right. So I'll just throw it out to you guys as we kind of wrap up for some final thoughts. I think first to you, Jayden, what do you think to kind of wrap up? What would you like to say to the folks as your final words?
Well, again, I think it's important to look at with the Freedom Convoy, kind of how it showed when we all come together to work for something, to try and get to Ottawa and try and get Trudeau to resign and the mandates dropped, how when we all work together and put our differences beside, because I know before people have always thought, well, us here in Alberta, we need to, you know, even separate because, you know, they blame the East out to be a bunch of liberals, but that Freedom Convoy, it definitely showed us that they're not a bunch of liberals and that they are standing up too. And I think it really just shows the power we all have when we come together and try and do something like that. We kept it going there for as long as we did. until the government kind of squashed it there. But I think that's important to look at.
And over to you, Devlin.
Well, I guess the last thing I could leave it on is, despite the optics of the mainstream media always trying to frame this as a very negative thing, and they lie in every way, and despite what happened to me a week and a half ago with the police, and even despite the last 3 years of crazy mandates and government overreach, I can say that I look back at these last 3 years and everything in a super positive way. It's made me proud to be Canadian, despite what I'm seeing happen in our government, because so many Canadians have stood up and really shown what it means to be Canadian. And I can see that across our country with this Freedom Convoy, and not only across our country, but in my city every weekend, I see every demographic of person showing what it means to be Canadian. And it's made me extremely proud. And I know that there's still a lot ahead of us, and the people who've done this to us over the last 3 years are still in power, but I don't look back at this negatively at all. And I'm super, super happy to say that I unified with millions across my country for what is, in my opinion, the most important thing in our lives, and that's freedom, for sure.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been our privilege to have both of you on the program. I think both of your stories are very important for people to know, and I think they're both very Canadian stories, and I agree with you, Devlin. I think freedom is at stake, and it is the fight of our time. I think we are in a war, a peaceful war, a new kind of war, and there are two clear visions of a future Canada. One involves freedom, and the other one does not.
Yeah.
And when I say war, I mean it is a peaceful war. It's a struggle, and I salute both of you for working on the freedom side, because that's what we're all about here too. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to demonstrate, freedom.
We're all brothers in arms in this.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Sorry, Brenden, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just concurring. You're good.
Okay. All right. And with that being said, we'll let both of you guys go, and we'll wrap up the show. And thank you both again for joining us on Maverick News tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for reporting the truth.
Hey,
thank you, Jayden. We'll be in touch with both of you again. Take care.
Sounds good. You as well.
And there you have it. So, two extremely important stories. Jayden's because he has been out there fighting as a demonstrator, protester, right?
Mm-hmm.
And has that positive side of it all. He wasn't there for the big police purge at the end of the Ottawa Freedom demonstration, but he's got that car, and I thought that car is a symbol. And I'll just bring it back up one more time here so people can see it if they're just tuning in here at the end. Here it is. Here's his car, signed for freedom, covered in signatures from his time at the Ottawa rally, and then picked up more signatures, of course, in Alberta, where he is right now, and in Red Deer. And every weekend their freedom rallies continue, as they do in Calgary. But the tone in Calgary obviously is different these days, because the police have decided to take a hard line, and I see that escalating. What's your prediction there, Brenden?
In regards to Calgary?
Yeah,
it's going to keep escalating. If that's what it looked like last weekend, just think about what it's going to look like subsequent weekends ahead. These worldwide marches, they continue to happen, and their intervals, I would say, are not really that understood, and that it just seems like in random intervals you get advertisements for Worldwide Freedom March or Rally. And so what intervals you're going to get another big protest at, I'm not sure. And I don't think it's predictable, but look, the city of Calgary is hitting all the right heads on all the right nails as far as tyranny goes. And I would say that city is a prime example of the woke cancer eating at itself. And if you don't believe me, just take a look, study their council, their counselors. Just quick scrolls through Twitter, and it will show you exactly what I'm talking about. And we have that problem all over North America right now, but I don't think I've seen any as bad as Calgary. Between the police chief, the counselors I've seen on Twitter, and just the news that's been coming out of there.
Well, I think if there's a time to pray, it's now, because we need to pray for the police chief of Calgary, for all the counselors out there, for the community leaders, all the politicians, for all the police officers, and everyone involved, including the demonstrators, the freedom fighters. We want everyone to remain safe, and we don't want to see escalation. We'd like to see resolution. We'd like to see people come together and find solutions to these conflicts and disagreements. And I think, as complicated as they seem to want to make it, I think the solutions are really not that complex. I think
no, it's easy.
I think it can be. So let's pray for some wisdom. And as I said the other night, let's hope that there's a little more tolerance, maybe a lot more tolerance on all sides to go around, because I fear that there will be escalation. And as things escalate, my message to everyone is remain peaceful. If you get punched, don't punch back. If you get bowled over, just take it. Deal with it later. If they haul you off to jail, just go off to jail and don't resist. Just be peaceful. And I'm not encouraging anybody to go protest either. People make their own decisions, right? I just don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like all the violence, and I don't think it ever had to come to that. And what we saw, but I'll tell you this, what we saw happen with Devlin, that makes my blood boil.
Yeah. It's as far as that is a wellness indicator for how well we are doing as a democracy, and it's a fail. It's a fail.
That wasn't just an assault on Devlin. That was an assault on Canada. That was an assault on freedom of speech, freedom of the media, freedom of expression. What they did to him is symbolic of the whole problem. And it never had to happen. So let's just pray and hope that these guys get it figured out in a better way. I've been pretty critical of the Calgary police chief here, but I just hope he finds a better path forward. We have to.
Yeah.
We have to. Sorry, but you're just going to have to find a better way.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So that being said, time to wrap up. You can donate and support us by going to freedomreporters.com. We do need your help. We do have expenses, and we are expanding out here. And the call-in system, I think, is resolved. So maybe tomorrow we'll be able to take call-in calls from all of the Maverick family tomorrow night. For those of you who want to participate in that, I think we have that all worked out. So
we'll test it out tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. So I think a call-in show tomorrow is in order, where we can put some voices to the names of the people who tune in here every night and support what we're doing by watching and subscribing, which is just as important as donating.
And sharing.
And sharing. So really appreciate that. And liking. We need lots of likes.
Smash the like button. Come on.
And there you go. So with that being said, throw it over to you, Brenden, for your final words.
Well, I do appreciate everybody watching, and we had two very unique stories here. One showing the positive side of community and one showing the negative side of community. And I think it delivered ultimately a very interesting contrast. My name is Brenden Kennedy, your co-hostess with the most, and I will see you next week or tomorrow. See you
and
tomorrow.
Hallelujah, who is just a thorn in everybody's side here, says, come on, guys, help Rick out. He is trying to make the show better. Well, thank you, Hallelujah. I haven't blocked Hallelujah. And people say, why did you block him? Because he's trying to help us out.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's a guy. In any case, thank you for the positive comments. We're trying to win you over, because even though you don't agree with a lot of the things that we say, we love you. And we love you. And he says, good show tonight, Rick. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Aww.
Appreciate it. See?
Don't you love it when the trolls
we're making
are nice?
friends.
We are making friends.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. And we respect you too. So there you go. Good show. Yeah, it was a good show. And we will bring you more stories like that as they come to light, so that we can shed more light on all of these things, because people like Devlin, they need to have their stories told. Canada needs these stories told, because the mainstream media just isn't doing it. So that's why we're here. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in and supporting what we do and participating, because just by watching, you are helping to get the word out, and we appreciate it all. So we'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on the Maverick News Channel. We are the Freedom Reporters. I'm Rick Walker.
And I'm Brenden Kennedy. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All right, catch you all on the flip side. Thanks, everybody, for watching.